Yeah, that could possibly happen because he may talk to coaches about what role you see for me on a team. I want to talk to a general manager, whatever. So those conversations are going to take place, and it may not happen as quickly as it has in the past for a lot of players on July 1.
Right, and Brock Boeser, I would say, is, if not the next name on the list, right there with Nikolai Ehlers in terms of the level of interest. And when you look at the teams that didn't get a crack at the Florida players, Mitch Marner goes to the Vegas Golden Knights. Anybody who's in the market for scoring, 100% has inquired on Brock Boeser. I'm told there are as many as 10 teams legitimately in the mix. And there's creativity being employed here. You know, there are some not so good teams that have big money on a shorter term or big money on a longer term. There's some Stanley Cup contending teams with interest in Brock Boeser on a short term or a longer term. The AAV obviously is an issue. All of the Canadian teams have expressed some level of interest in Brock Boeser. I look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Vancouver Canucks aren't entirely out on Brock Boeser yet. We look at the Winnipeg Jets because of what Bob said. It's highly unlikely Ehlers is going back to Winnipeg. Winnipeg likes that level of secondary scoring in Brock Boeser. So he's got a tough decision to make, but good news for James Duthie. I expect that, unlike Ehlers, Boeser will make his call today.
And to Bob's point a little bit, that Ehlers might take his time, but there are other dominoes to fall, right? I mean, teams are going to not sit there and wait to see what happens. And CJ, another guy in an interesting position is Mikael Granlund.
Well, he's in a fantastic spot. He can play down the middle, and there's just not a lot of names on this board. When you see Sam Bennett sign, John Tavares down the list, a lot of centers have come off. And as a result of that, Mikael Granlund has considerable interest, like 10 teams type of interest at this point. And, you know, there was some interest there for him to stay in Dallas. He was, you know, picked up in January by the Stars, had a nice run there, but the money just couldn't work for Dallas. They couldn't get into the ballpark that it's going to take to keep this player. So he's going to get a hefty AAV, but I do expect it to be a short-term deal for Granlund. He's not looking for one of these extendo contracts like we saw in Florida last night.
So, Pierre LeBrun, let's turn our attention to defense. And a lot of guys signed in the last few days. A lot of players re-signed with their teams, but Vladislav Gavrikov did not with the LA Kings.
Yeah, well, with Provorov and Ekblad signing yesterday and staying put, it's a good day to be Vladislav Gavrikov, because not only do I think he'll get at least what Provorov got in Columbus, which was $8.5 million a year over 7 years, I think he might get north of that. He might be the highest paid player in the UFA market by the end of today because of how thin the top 4 UFA-D market really is. There's Orlov, there's Lindgren, but Gavrikov is the big dog on that list, and I believe there's interest from the Rangers. And what about Detroit? We believe the Red Wings were going to take a heavy swing at Aaron Ekblad. Had Ekblad gone to market, he didn't. I think Detroit will probably get in there, but so will a lot of teams for a guy like Gavrikov.
Right, and then you wonder about the trade dominoes and how they fall on the blue line as well. There's lots of speculation around Bo Byram and the Buffalo Sabres. Pierre's done a lot of reporting on Rasmus Andersson and the Calgary Flames. And if the New York Rangers are a big player, and we know that they are on Gavrikov, what happens to K'Andre Miller? Right? The ask is high for K'Andre Miller, but there's also a good amount of reason to believe that he's going to get traded.
And one of the stars of our trade deadline coverage was Mikko Rantanen, of course, getting traded to Carolina. Part of that package going back was Logan Stankoven, and he gets an 8-year deal this morning, $6 million AAV to stay in Carolina. They bought up all his 30s, so it'll be a while before he's on free agent frenzy.
All right, so the salary cap is going to $95.5 million next season, James, and NHL teams are anxious to blow all that space.
Well, then you have teams that have tons of space that are going to have to overspend today just to get to the floor. Let's just recap everything that has gone on over the last few days. Of course, Mitch Marner gets an 8-year, $12 million contract, technically with Toronto, then is traded to Vegas for Nicholas Roy. Columbus defenseman Ivan Provorov, Florida blue liner Aaron Ekblad, Panthers playoff MVP runner-up Brad Marchand, also signing yesterday. Sam Bennett, of course, 3 days earlier, 8 years times 8. Then Evan Bouchard and Matthew Nyes, the restricted free agents, both get lucrative deals. Bouchard, 4 years at 10.5, and Nyes, 6 years at 7.75 in Toronto. And again, as I mentioned all off the top, this is all against the backdrop of Connor McDavid and what will be, we think, a landmark contract and negotiations coming up over this summer. He's eligible to sign a new deal as early as today, but we're not expecting that to happen. Oh, did stick around despite the opening, which is shocking.
Well, usually in years past, I would kind of give you this one if it became like a bit piece thing where I got I'm giving you one for the day right now. It's for the day.
Just don't come to you ever?
No.
Seems like it's going to be a lot of Brock Boeser and Gavrikov today. You ready to go like long-winded on both?
Yeah, and you just mentioned, these guys just mentioned the numbers that might be tossed around for Gavrikov. I'm kind of happy because in years past, I'm like, compared to other sports, the worst player in an NBA team might make $13 million. I'm like, how come the NHL's like that? It's kind of slowly getting to that where guys are getting paid, and I love seeing it. It seems kind of crazy, the money that's being tossed around, but I love seeing it.
No ex-player bitterness at the end of the table for I was born 20 years too early?
Jealousy, possibly?
A wee bit kicking over here, yes. I love my life, except for today. The only day I'm like, would have been great if I was 25 right now.
Hey guys, take a seat. We never got paid.
That's right. Point. By the way, you're talking about money-o and basketball players. Just quickly off hockey, SGA, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, off a historic season in Oklahoma City, signs a 4-year extension, $285 million. That's $71.25 million per season.
That works.
Which is above the NHL salary cap floor.
Perfect.
Of 70.
One-man roster. That's all you need.
Just wacky. We'll see. McDavid likely sets the bar as the highest player. I don't know, maybe Kaprizov does before that. What do you make of what's happened over the last 24 hours, 48 hours?
Well, I go back to Game 6 after the Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup, and you asked Bill Zito,
right.
can you get him? He goes, yeah, I think I can get him. And you went, really?
Yeah.
Well, he really did.
Come on, Bill.
Okay, well, I know, right? But he did get it done. So here we sit here at the end of the day, we're going to ask, who won the day? Bill Zito's already won the day.
So it's over.
He's won the day.
We don't have a trophy like we do on trade deadline, but maybe we should have one for the
We should, because he's won it, and they are the clear-cut favorite to be the Stanley Cup champions in 2026. I don't think there's any doubt. We'll probably get asked, okay, who's the favorite to win the Stanley Cup? It's Florida.
Yeah.
It can be in lieu of GM of the Year, which he never wins.
Yeah.
That's Jim Nill's award. So Bill Zito can get our free agent award.
I think culture's tossed around a lot in professional sports, like building a cult. Those guys down there, they truly do have a culture, and the main focus of it is winning. They're a bunch of old school guys. Yes, they like to win the championship and poke fun at your song and make fun of the players, and I didn't really love that, but their culture down there, it's about winning. Like playing a brand of hockey that wins, and that's the most important thing. It's fantastic that they kept those guys all together.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, they had to go a little bit longer in term to get that AAV down, but they're taking a haircut because they want to stay, as you mentioned. But what I'm impressed by is you got to win the first time to create that culture, right? You got to build a winning team. I mean, Florida hasn't always been there, right? It hasn't always been that destination with the Panthers, and now all of a sudden they're winning. Now guys want to be there. You're looking at them fitting into the lineup. Someone like Brad Marchand on that third line, if that's what you want to call it, with Listerine and Lundell. I mean, who wouldn't want to stay and go to the elbow room?
Just because Craig brought it up, this was a few minutes after they hoisted the Stanley Cup back in Florida.
This is probably the last thing you want me to ask you, and you can tell me to get lost. But you got 3 big-name free agents. How quickly do you get into that? Can you bring possibly them all back? Can you bring 2 out of 3 back?
I think we can bring them all back.
Really?
Yeah.
With sizable hometown discounts?
Let's just leave it at that.
Got it.
Yeah, you did get it.
Discount. And we don't want to go too far down this road today, but there are tax implications to some of these contracts. Sam Bennett, yes, he took I guess a discount, but not
those
really.
Those aren't a factor, MJ. Those aren't a factor.
Well, they are. It is a factor, not the factor, but it is a factor. And it's a big one.
Kachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Verhaeghe, Marchand, Lundell, Jones, Ekblad, Forsling, all locked up until at least 2030. You know, we talked about this whole core 4 thing. That's like a core 11 or something. Right?
Well, that's the biggest factor, is like we just talked about what their principles are and their culture. One of their biggest things is depth, like true depth. It's not a core 4 where it's like Edmonton or Toronto or different teams where it's like those guys have to do it or it doesn't get done. There's multiple options. You just mentioned all the players that are available to help contribute offensively or make things happen. They took turns all through the playoffs of making it happen for the Florida Panthers. It was the ultimate sign of actual depth on a hockey team.
So timing your contracts properly. They signed a lot of these guys. Like Lundell would be worth $9 million now. But you sign him early and you don't miss, and now he's a great value at 5. Even Matthew Tkachuk, he wanted to go there. He would being paid $3-4 million more now, but you sign them early. If you don't miss on those contracts, that's why you go along with these players. And if it works out well, then you find yourself in a great spot a few years later.
All right. Big news today. The touchscreen is back.
Let's go.
Takia Singh is here with Frankie Corrado, Frankie's big free agent frenzy board, which kind of got demolished yesterday. Poor Frankie, but we still have lots of names up there.
It's good. The board's looking good, isn't it?
Yeah,
Come on,
we've
it's
got
not
you
that
doing
bad,
the heavy
James.
lifting. Yeah, it's great, actually. And taking a look at the top of the board, we've got some very intriguing free agents. Let's talk about Nikolai Ehlers. Everyone is talking about Nikolai Ehlers right now. What kind of money are we looking at for him? Because he's never cracked 65 points in a season, and where's the best fit for him, maybe?
Okay, there is a lot of money for Nikolai Ehlers because he's such a self-starter. He's one of those guys that can be a great individual player, and as we know, there's been a lot of great players that have been plucked off the board. It was a good year for Nick Ehlers with the Winnipeg Jets, unfortunately cut short due to injury, but you think about where this could be a good fit or maybe an interesting fit. We heard the insiders talk about Carolina. I find that so fascinating because the Carolina Hurricanes are such a dump the puck in and forecheck kind of team. Nikolai Ehlers feasts off the rush, as seen as evidence here against the Vancouver Canucks. So good at doing things himself, but I guess if you're Carolina, you might look at a clip like this and say, you know what? Once we get playing in the offensive zone, he's still so fast, he can create that kind of separation from defensemen, so maybe we don't mind having a guy like Nick Ehlers to give us a little more off the rush, which is not an area that they usually excel in.
Yeah, and now what about Brock Besser? He's only surpassed 30 goals once in the 9 seasons he's been with the Canucks. Do we expect him to be more productive wherever he lands?
He will be productive. The only reason why he's never really hit 30 goals on a consistent basis is because he's had injury issues. He's only a year removed now from a 40-goal season. But if Nick Ehlers is moving on, absolutely the Winnipeg Jets should be all over Brock Besser. And whatever you are willing to spend on Nick Ehlers, you have to throw that money at Brock Besser, because I look right here to the middle six of the Winnipeg Jets. They need goal scoring. Pardon me, they need to keep scoring goals. That was where they improved so much this season. First in the power play, top 5 team when it comes to goals per game in the NHL. Brock Besser has a shot that can be goaltenders clean. And if you're talking about players in, players out, Nick Ehlers played the bumper position on the power play for the Jets, while Brock Besser does that for the Vancouver Canucks and does it well. So that would be an excellent fit for the Winnipeg Jets if, you know, like we know, Nick Ehlers is probably moving on.
Yeah, and well, we can maybe argue that Brock Besser didn't shoot the puck enough, averaging 1.9 shots per game, easily the lowest of his career.
Thank you, guys. We'll get back to you periodically throughout the day. The biggest story really is what's happening to the cap. The flat cap era officially over with an exclamation mark, with upper team payroll limits skyrocketing from 3 years at $81.5 million to a projected $95.5, then $104 and $113.5 million over the next 3 years. So if you take that 81.5 to 113.5, terrible math, but like 40%, the cap going up over a short-term period. So we're likely to see some silly numbers thrown around today and definitely over the next couple of years as other guys reach UFAs. The biggest, of course, signing and the biggest free agent available was Mitch Marner, who signs the deal with Toronto, goes to Vegas. This morning he posted on his Instagram a goodbye letter to Toronto and the fans of the Leafs. I'll try to read it for you quickly. Now that my time in Toronto has come to an end, wanted to share what these last 9 years have meant to me. Leaving isn't easy. This is the city where I grew up, fell in love with hockey, where I've had this incredible honor of living out my childhood dream, wearing the Maple Leaf on my chest. It wasn't just about playing for a team, it was about representing my home. When I was drafted, all I wanted to do was help bring a Stanley Cup to Toronto. Always the goal, came up short. I know how much that means to the city. I know the expectations that come with wearing this jersey. I gave everything I had, but in the end, it wasn't good enough. Hard to admit because I wanted it so badly for all of us. To the fans, thank you. Playing in Toronto is special because of you. Passion, pride, hope, pressure, the support. You care deeply. Thanks all his coaches, trainers, equipment managers, etc. Grateful for every conversation, every moment of support, every bit of belief. As I prepare for what comes next, he finishes, I leave a different person than I was at 18. I'll always be grateful for my time here, and most of all, so proud to have been a Toronto Maple Leaf with heartfelt thanks.
Sorry, Mitch.
That is the goodbye note from Mitch Marner.
Bye-bye.
I mean, we'll talk about the implications on Toronto and his goodbye as we go on throughout the day. Let's start with where he goes in Vegas. Why is Vegas a good fit? If you feel Vegas is the right fit for Mitch Marner, what does he do to the Golden Knights?
He brings what he brings. He's a very good player, one of the best right wingers in the NHL. He provides offense. He can play with other great players. They have Hurdle and Eichel down the middle, so he's going to get to play with a great teammate. And it's different than Toronto. As much as he says he loved Toronto and he wanted, respects the time here, I think he wanted a change of pace and change of locale for him and his family. And what makes Vegas the right option? They're a good team with good players who paid him a ton of money. He got the full 8 years, and it's not Toronto. It's about as far away from Toronto hockey-wise as you can get as far as the culture around the city and everything else, which is something he obviously wanted for him and his family.
Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly. And then you look at the PK as well, what he can do there. Vegas wasn't overly strong, 26th in the league in that department, so I think he's going to add an edge there. But when you talk about pressure, I mean, intrinsically within that organization, it's cup or bust for them too, right? So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him there as well to perform when it matters the most. But no question about it, this is a guy that can produce points, and he can dance and draw to him, and he can dish that puck to someone like Eichel, as you'd mentioned. So you can see that offensive flair certainly being bolstered with that top six.
Yeah, and it's going to be the on-ice pressure. He's going to be able to leave the rink and go get gas and go to a store, and he's not going to have that element to it. But the Vegas Golden Knights, we've seen it in the past, they don't screw around. It's like, this is going to work, we're going to win, or we're going to make changes. So there's going to be, it's not like he's just going there and say, nobody cares about hockey here in Vegas. There is a burning desire to win. The expectations are big, and they're demanding on their players to get the job done.
They are demanding, and it's real simple. I mean, when they came in expansion, they were big, they were bold, and they took advantage of that. They get Pietrangelo, they get Stone, they get Eichel, they get Marner. They're not fiddling with the dials here.
Does he make them the favorite in the West?
I don't know if they're the favorite, because I still think they have some gaps in their team. One of the things, getting Sissons and getting Jeremy Lauzon, like Sissons becomes a really kind of a reasonable facsimile for Nick Waugh, right? Yeah. Lauzon's a hard competitor. They're not done. They're never done.
But I walk away from this thinking Mitch Marner got everything he wanted.
Yep.
He got the 8 years.
Yep.
He got the $100 million. And he got the market he wanted on a good team. He got everything he wanted. And more power to him. I mean, you have the leverage. He had it. He's a good enough player to warrant it. But he walks away, sure, maybe missing Toronto. And as far as pressure goes, no one as good as Mitch Marner doesn't put the more pressure on themselves than a GM or a coach or a market. He puts that kind of on himself, so I think he'll be fine with that.
And to answer your question, James, do they make the Vegas Golden Knights the favorite? All of the star players for the Maple Leafs didn't exactly light up the playoffs at important times for their own team with Toronto. That's why we're talking about change here. So if it was any one of the big four that hasn't got the job done for the Leafs, they don't make anybody a favorite going to a different team. If they were so dialed in, they won championships, you'd be like, oh, wow, watch out for those guys now. But it's still going to be a wait and see come playoff time. What's this guy going to do when the chips are on the table?
The taxes and no state taxes have become a major issue and talking point in hockey over the last few months. So let's look at the take-home pay. In Toronto, the AAV at $12 million would take home $5.6 million. In Vegas, it's $2 million more at $7.6. There are it's too simple, by the way. There are other things, opportunities in Toronto, and there's endorsements.
And there's different ways to mitigate the taxes, but I looked at it the other way.
Right.
So Mitch Marner makes 12 in Vegas. His take home is whatever it is there, 7.6. To make that much money in Toronto, he'd have to sign for over 16.
Right.
16. He'd be the highest paid player in the world to take home the same amount of money as he's going to take home from Vegas.
Right.
Toronto would never pay him $16 million.
Right.
And I don't think Jeff O'Neill would be okay with him getting paid $16 million. So it does matter a little bit.
But the reason the tax matters is because these organizations are good.
Because they're good.
Right.
They're good.
I played
Vegas,
in Tampa,
Florida.
no taxes, we couldn't get players.
Winnipeg enters July 1st with $23.5 million available to sign 5 players as we look at the Canadian money available with the Canadian clubs. Edmonton just $551,000 left with 1 open roster spot. Montreal already over the cap, but that includes the retired carry prices, $10.5 million, which can be reallocated to LTIR to create more cap space. We have, as per usual on this day, an abundance of panels for you, including one of our favorites, Gino Reda, and our goaltender panel.
Oh, you're too kind, James. Thanks for that. Joined by Kevin Weeks, Marty Biron, and Jay McLennan. And James, to say thank you for what you just said, I'll give you some news. We just got a free agent signing. Our Pierre LeBrun tells us that Jake Allen has re-signed with the New Jersey Devils. It's a 5-year deal at $1.88 million. Weeksy, that's far below what we were thinking. At some point, there was talk about $3 million a year, but 1.88. Are you surprised by the number?
I'm a little surprised by the number, but I think it's more about the term and to kind of stretch it out and help the Devils in the cap. And Jake Allen's really happy here. I've spoken to his agent, Alan Waugh, before just posting that on Twitter. Talked to him last night. Jake Allen loves being a New Jersey Devil. He's been excellent. He comes in, he plays like a number one. He handles the puck exceptionally well. He's a winning goalie. His teammates love him. So he loved the fit. They loved him. Hence the deal here in the Garden State.
That's really what it was. And Weeks, you just nailed it. It's term. They said to him, how much do you want to make? Well, you want to make $9 million. That's probably the going rate as a free agent. to
He's going to
everybody
be
else.
39 at the end of this deal.
You're right, but Brad Marchand's going to be 54 by the end of his deal. This is the currency that you're dealing with right now. It's not money. Yes, it's money, but it's also term. That's what you're doing. So, Jake Allen, all you do is say, hey, you want $9 million stuffed in your jeans? We're going to stretch it out over 5 years.
The problem now is that the goalie market is getting really, really thin, right? Thatcher Demko signs an extension, got Allen left, Gibson got traded. Who's left? Like, if you're
Ilya Samsonov is now number 1
I know
on the free
exactly.
agents.
You got Vladar, you got Samsonov, Forsberg, Georgiev. Look, it's very thin right now. And so Jake Allen going for 1.8 over 5 years, he's not going to get a lot of friends in the goalie fraternity, in the goalie union, saying, dude, you could have gotten $3.5, $4 million maybe somewhere else, and now you got half price over 5 years. I think it makes even more of an issue with the goalie market moving forward.
Okay, Stan Bowman, after the Oilers' failed run again this year, made it real clear, we're going to take a really good look at our goaltending and what's there in the market. So clearly, if free agency is not the route, then he's got to go the route of trades. What's best available up there? I mean, now the Vancouver Canucks are going to be paying, starting next year, not this season, but next year, $13 million for their 2 goalies. Now that Demko got the extension.
I think what you have is the luxury of patience here, because they have made it to the finals 2 years in a row with the tandem that they have in place, making a total of $3.6 million.
But how patient can you be when you know your goaltending can't do it?
Wait until U.S. Thanksgiving, and all these teams that believe that they're Stanley Cup contenders all of a sudden go, we look in the mirror and go, hey, we might not make the playoffs. We have goaltender X available. I think you have the luxury of being patient if the Edmonton Oilers.
It's the Colorado plan right now, because there's nothing available. You may have to punt it down to, again, November and see what we see. You're looking at it, and maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs should look into trading Joseph Woll, because the market may bring a pretty big return if you dangle him out there.
Yeah, exactly, guys. Also want to say happy Canada Day and happy birthday to our man, Noodles. Happy birthday, Noodles.
It was yesterday, and
I would also...
and birthdays are for children, not for adults.
He's changed. That's corporate Noodles. That's uncooked Noodles all of a sudden. He's corporate on us. No, but here's another name that I'm going to throw out. And again, I want to preface this with respect to everybody involved. I am by no means a legal expert. I don't know what the process looks like from a legal standpoint back home up there in Canada with the Hockey Canada situation and everybody involved. I wonder, and I don't know what this would look like potentially based on the league, if there'll be any supplementary or additional discipline. I just wonder about a name like Carter Hart, not because I'm saying he's coming back, not because I'm saying that he will be allowed to come back, but he is from Alberta. I have heard whispers about this being a potential, depending on how the legal situation plays out. Just something to ponder as it was positioned to me.
And we will have a lot of time to ponder today, because there's still not a huge market in free agency for goaltending. However, don't be surprised if we see some wheeling and dealing, especially from the Oilers standpoint. They've got 2 goalies, Skinner at 2.6, Pickard at $1 million for the upcoming season. Both of them are pending UFAs after the following season, so something's got to give, James.
Boys, thank you. One early development, if you've watched this show for the last few years, so we've come on at 11 a.m. Eastern, and the insiders have announced a bunch of UFA signings that wouldn't be officially announced till noon Eastern time, which, of course, you're not supposed to be able to talk to other teams until noon Eastern time, but it was always nudge, nudge, wink, wink. The NHL was not happy about that the last few years, and so far we haven't had any of those UFA announcements, so maybe the teams have at least listened, and no news breaking until again 12 Eastern time is when the new contracts can be announced. We'll start our cross-Canada tour next on the Free Agent Frenzy. With the Eastern teams, the Maple Leafs have lost a superstar, the Senators have retained a veteran goal scorer, and the Montreal Canadiens welcome a big addition on the blue line. Our reporters in Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal will have the latest as we edge closer to the start of the Frenzy.
Canadians like to pack a lot into summer, kind of like a Harvey's seasoned chicken wrap. Packed with your choice of grilled, buffalo, or crispy chicken, and topped just the way you like. Pack Harvey's wraps into your summer.
And Oilers and the Boston Bruins for Victor Arvidsson. That's going to be as they only have $500,000 to spend right now. Just see what happens there.
With the CIBC Smart Account, you can go back through your spending history, allowing you to see your money and make sense of it.
The Leafs have
See your money clearly with the CIBC Smart Account.
Kelly Yarncrook on the trade market. I think the teams that miss out on
with Deluxe's buy one get one free,
Tanev,
skip the stress,
and those guys,
and do it for less.
That miss out on those guys will end up trading.
Buy one get one free ends July 7th. Find your local paint store at Deluxe.ca.
I think they want to add one.
On July 18th, when the world needs saving, there's only one team to call.
It's Smurfing time. I think I just smurfed my pants.
Hefty Smurf.
Can you even lift, bro?
I can do 6 sit-ups, all in a row.
Clumsy Smurf.
You earned your name. Rainy Smurf.
Where are we going? Way to kill the mood, glasses.
And Rihanna is Smurfette.
What? I'm a stress eater.
Smurfs.
What happened to camouflage, Smurf?
I'm right here.
The new Elite Driver's breakthrough AI 10X face helps deliver our best combination of distance and forgiveness ever, with drives up to 8 yards longer. The future of performance is elite in every way with the new Elite Drivers from Callaway.
The Ontario Honda Dealers Indy Toronto, July 18th to the 20th. The 37th Indy at Exhibition Place. Racing, interactive entertainment, food trucks, and autograph sessions. Your Ontario Honda dealers present Free Fan Friday, benefiting Make-A-Wish Canada. You can experience the action on Toronto's downtown streets with a voluntary donation. The NTT IndyCar Series, sports cars, and more. Tickets start at $50. Kids 12 and under free. For more info, visit HondaIndy.com.
Drop a hi in the chat. Let
He's
me know
thinking about his diabetes. She's thinking you won't have time to eat like you should. And he doesn't want her to worry about that. Today. But we can all rest easy, because that's where
a lot
I
of
come
balls
in.
Up in the air right now.
Glycerna, a trusted ally for people with diabetes.
Box. Box.
Buy one box meal, get one free. Only on the KFC app and Skip. F1 the movie, now playing.
Free Agent Frenzy is presented by Harvey's. Beat the heat with a creamy hand-spun shake or a frozen drink all summer long. Harvey's, it's a beautiful thing.
A lot to celebrate on this Canada Day, but this is not one of those things. Edmonton now has the distinction, dubious or not, of reaching and losing more Stanley Cup finals than any other Canadian team since Montreal was the last Canadian team to win the Cup in 1993. I would say still getting there is more of an achievement than a dubious distinction, but it's still painful for all of the Canadian clubs. Edmonton has now lost 3 times, breaking a 2-way tie with Vancouver at 2 as the drought continues for all of Canada. Little piece of news for you. The Oilers trading Victor Arvidsson to Boston. Looks like a mid-round pick coming back. The trade call still pending. We'll get more from the insiders in just a second. That's $4 million of cap room freed up for the Edmonton Oilers. As promised, we're going to start our cross-Canada tour by looking at the Eastern Canadian teams. Mark Masters, of course, covers the Toronto Maple Leafs for us. Kenzie Lalonde, the Montreal Canadiens. She's in Brossard, Quebec. And Claire Hanna, the Ottawa Senators. We'll begin with you, Mark, as the post-Mitch Marner era begins and somehow finding a way to change the DNA with not a lot of high quality out there on the market.
Yeah, James, you know, Marner era officially over. It feels a bit surreal still here. We were in the dressing room at the practice facility after the draft. Marner still had a stall, but we've seen this coming for a while, and Trey Living said it's a challenge. He admits that, but he also sees opportunity, and that opportunity is a little more cap space than he's had in the past, a bit more flexibility, and Trey Living has made it clear he's willing to be patient. He said if it happens July 1st, it happens July 1st. It could happen August 1st, September 1st. He's reminding reporters that there's no games scheduled this week. He's going to be patient and diligent as he looks to fill the void left behind by the franchise's 5th leading scorer, James.
Beck now and Kenzie Lalonde, and the Habs already made a massive splash in this offseason as they go out and get Noah Dobson and add them to a really good young defense core. Still some other things they're shopping for, though, Kenzie.
Yeah, so the Canadians were able to check one of two major items on their checklist and bringing in Dobson, which can fill in that void left by the retirement of David Savard on the blue line. But then you look up front to the forward group, and you want to bolster this second line and, if possible, bring in a strong 2C. But as Jeff Gordon alluded to last week, this is a competitive market right now, and there's less sellers. I will be keeping my eyes on UFAs, Christian Dvorak and Yoel Armia. Dvorak in particular, if you can't find what he's looking for on the open market, if they could bring him back at a lower rate just to give the Canadians some insurance at that centering position. He was also a big piece to their successful penalty kill. Now, also to that, speaking of centers, it was a great sight here in Brossard this morning at roughly 9:30 a.m. Kirby Dach was out on the ice doing some light skating and light shooting as he's about to go into what will be an impactful training camp for himself if he wants to grab a hold of that second line centering position. Look, the last few years, the Canadians have done a good job of acquiring picks and developing these prospects. Now they kind of enter that second phase of this rebuild, forming an identity. So they're going to be strategic in who they bring in and who they're willing to let go.
All right, we'll check in with Kenzie as news happens throughout the day. Ditto with Mark Masters. Let's go to Claire Hanna now with the Ottawa Senators. Steve Staios has done some business already, getting Claude Giroux on an extension, Levi Merilainen, Nick Cousins as well. What's left for Staios and company?
Yeah, well, James, even with those signings, he's managed to keep $7.3 million worth of cap space. And right now for the Ottawa Senators, it's about adding a proven goal scorer, because last year they were 28th in the league when it came to even strength goals. Beyond Brady Tkachuk, who led the group with 29 goals, only 4 skaters eclipsed that 20-goal mark. So I know that Steve Staios has picked up the phone and called the Brock Besser camp, but I'm not sure if they're going to have the money or time to sign him. Now, beyond that, one of the big priorities is going to be depth, especially when it comes to a fourth-line center. Beyond Tim Stützle, Dylan Cousins, and Shane Pinto, they're really looking thin in that department, so I think that's going to be a priority. And also, they're going to be looking to add depth on defense. Nick Jensen had hip surgery. He has progressed really well, but there's questions if he's going to be ready for training camp. And then I know that Nicholas Matenpalo there is listed as left D, but he does play on the right side. So I think those are going to be 2 areas they want to bolster up.
Claire Hanna in Ottawa, and again, like the others, we'll get back to Claire when news breaks, if it does, with the Ottawa Senators. So little stuff for the Senators that they needed to get done, a team that makes the playoffs after that long drought. Do you think the group in itself, just bringing them back and the experience of being there, is enough to make a step or two upwards next year, or do they have to make some changes somewhere?
Well, I think they still need to tinker a little bit. When you look at that top 6, you know, you need some 5-on-5 scoring, and that's going to be a key for them. But when you do look at the acquisition or sort of the extension of Claude Giroux, I think that's a nice, tidy piece of business with a real nice number. But he likely drops, you know, into that third line if you really want to contend, right? You need that speed. You need speed in that top 6. Ottawa Senators are a rush team, so I think that if you want to play off the rush, you have to have that kind of speed. And it's going to be interesting to see who they do align with. Stützle, of course, Zetterlund signing the extension. He's got speed. He can finish as well. But I still think that they could look to add someone up there. But, of course, the number is the big question in the cap space available. And then on the back end, getting Jordan Spence, right? Just looking at that.
Do you like that acquisition?
You know what? I don't mind it, because with Nick Jensen as a righty and coming off surgery, what's he going to look like? And this is kind of a guy in LA who didn't get an opportunity in the playoffs. You know, he played over 16 minutes in the regular season. So really interested to see from a defensive standpoint what he can bring.
I think he's going to be good. Yeah. A third pair.
Like a third pairing.
Third pair guy. And Travis Green wants to play a pretty structured system in Ottawa, and I think he could thrive in that like in LA. He's a pretty good player.
Claude Giroux is there as kind of still the old veteran guys to help the young guys along, but this is for them to take another step. It's going to be about the development and those guys learning what they saw in the first round last year, and Tim Stützle and Batherson and Cousin elevating and being even better and being dominant players. That's what's going to help the Sens along. Obviously, their goaltending, you want it to be more consistent this year because they've got the guy to do the job back there. That was their biggest concern. I think their defense is solidified with some of those younger guys stepping up and being a part of it, but it's those young guys elevating and being elite star players that's going to help them out.
I think with the Ottawa Senators, if you're coming back with the same thing, you might not make the playoffs. They just barely made the playoffs.
Enough goals in that second line between Perron and Zetterlund. Like that, to me, screams as you're rolling the dice on both those guys scoring enough.
100%.
Lots on Montreal ahead, lots on Toronto ahead if you're fans of both of those teams. There's going to be a ton of money spent today. That's the Captain Obvious statement. NHL teams collectively crossed a 10-figure threshold on free agent day last year. They spent $1.2 billion on 157 player contracts, according to Puckpedia.com, leading the way Jake Ensel's 7-year, $63 million contract with the Tampa Bay Lightning. We have lots more ahead for you here on the Free Agent Frenzy. We'll head west where the Oilers have locked up their top defenseman, but a cap crunch awaits, making a deal today that freed up a little bit of that. Well, big questions still need to be answered in Vancouver, in Calgary, and of course in Winnipeg as we get set for the start of the free agency period just 20 minutes away.
What do Canada's most passionate burger lovers think about the Teen Burger? How is it?
It's stellar. The patty's nice and juicy. What I love about A&W is the beef. The quality of A&W's beef is unmatched.
Taste the Teen Burger at A&W.
Olympic organic yogurt is a delicious choice crafted with care. We only use organic milk from grass-fed cows with no GMOs. We love cows as much as Maya. See? Hang in there, little guy. Olympic organic yogurt, crafted with care.
Hello, Intact Insurance.
We had a collapse pipe and it caused flooding in our basement.
We can send someone tonight.
I totally understand. We'll take care of you.
With unmatched response time, it's no accident that we can get you back on track faster.
You're so amazing. Thanks so much.
Locked in a stare down with Mother Nature, some wilt, but others push forward. They are the real ones, and they drink a real good light beer. Slim and Clear 2.0. Real ones know.
Put us in a box. Go ahead. That just gives us something to break out of. An opportunity to shatter expectations. In the next generation GMC Terrain AT4, when we choose to challenge, we challenge completely. We are professional grade.
The Ontario Honda Dealers Indy Toronto, July 18th to the 20th. The 37th Indy at Exhibition Place. Racing, interactive entertainment, food trucks, and autograph sessions. Your Ontario Honda dealers present Free Fan Friday, benefiting Make-A-Wish Canada. You can experience the action on Toronto's downtown streets with a voluntary donation. The NTT IndyCar Series, sports cars, and more. Tickets start at $50. Kids 12 and under free. For more info, visit HondaIndy.com.
Welcome to Frosty Farms, home of Wendy's 99-cent Frosty. Raised right, free range, of course, made with Canadian dairy. It's farm to Frosty. Get a small Wendy's Frosty for just 99 cents.
We know that the remarkable happens when East meets West. It comes alive in our shared love of sport, in our dedication to craftsmanship, our desire to create. And right here, Sapporo, where Japanese artistry meets Western tradition, you too can discover the remarkable where East meets West.
A lot of money to be spent, led by San Jose at $44.1 million of cap space, and that's where you might get some funky contracts because they have to get to the floor as well here. 8 open roster spots there, $44.1 million to work with. Winnipeg has $23.5 million of cap space and 5 open roster spots. All right, as we move along and close in on the opening of the free agent frenzy at 12 Eastern time, let's check in with Gord Miller and the insiders.
And this is feeling more and more like Trade Center. We've got another deal to talk about, the Montreal Canadiens and St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, kind of a creative deal here, Gord, because it involves 2 prospects that were both in the 2021 draft in the first round. Zach Bolduc from the St. Louis Blues, coming off a breakout season, 19 goals this year, goes to Montreal in exchange for Logan Mailloux, whose path to the Montreal blue line was probably blocked. They've obviously got a lot of young defensemen in that system, just made the Noah Dobson deal a couple days ago. And so this is a way to give each player a little bit of an opportunity. And obviously in Mayu, someone that the St. Louis Blues coveted here.
Yeah, and this may work out well for both teams given the ceiling on both these young guys, but certainly this could have been a bigger trade. What we've been reporting for almost a week now is that the Canadiens and the Blues had conversations about Jordan Kyrou. Kyrou's full no-trade clause kicked in at midnight last night, and so he's pretty safe now if he wants to be. He would have to waive for any trade, and so we said this a few times. We weren't really 100% sure if Doug Armstrong was that motivated to trade Jordan Kyrou, except that he was certainly investigating what teams are willing to pay up for him, kind of like he did with Braden Shen for the trade deadline, and also kept him.
We just saw the graphic about teams that have money to spend, who are motivated not just to spend money, but have to break through. The Detroit Red Wings, Dregs, would qualify as one of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, the playoff drought in Detroit is long enough. It's 9 years and counting, and there's a hunger within that organization fan base to get back into the postseason, given the history of the Red Wings. They were counting, hoping is probably a better way to describe it, that one of the Florida pieces wasn't going to get signed. We're ready to invest deeply in Aaron Ekblad on defense. Well, obviously that wasn't the case. What about Brad Marchand on the wing? If you look at that second line in Detroit, you can envision why they need a left winger there. So lots of money and lots of creativity from Steve Yzerman and the Detroit Red Wings. So I think there'll be a player today, either free agency or via trade.
So we mentioned, CJ, earlier that the cap is going to $95.5 million. There are a number of teams that are far from shouting distance of the floor, which is $70.6 million.
Yeah, and San Jose Sharks are the one that jump out to me. You go to Puckpedia and dial it up. They're about 19 million plus. The Sharks are, as of this moment, of the salary cap floor. And so, there's a couple things they can do. They're certainly going to go and get some free agents today, spend some money that way, but perhaps via trade, they could be a spot for teams looking to shed a contract or something of that manner to get there.
So, Bob McKenzie, James mentioned a few minutes ago about we might not get the usual burst of contracts at noon. And it's worth pointing out that standard player contracts in the NHL are complicated, multi-page documents, and they take a while to work through. But we have seen in past years them done more quickly than perhaps you might think.
Humanly possible.
Thank you.
You know what? The fear of tampering is real. And Bill Daly, the Deputy Commissioner of the National Hockey League, sent out a memo to all the teams last week, and it's had a very chilling effect on how they go about business. Now, it hasn't had a chilling effect on tampering. It's had a chilling effect on not getting caught at tampering. So, a little bit of history. A number of years ago, the NHL and the NHLPA agreed there was going to be a shopping period where teams could talk to all the players that are available and then make up their mind how they wanted to proceed. Then they got rid of that, but it didn't really ever stop. And last number of years, we knew on the morning on this day that there were 10, 15 deals done. We knew what the term was. We knew what the AAV was. And at 12:01, 12:02, 12:03, we were reporting all this crazy detail. There are deals done right now. I know there are, but they're not going to get filed until 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon because nobody wants to be the first team or the first player or the first agent to get dinged on a huge tampering fiasco.
All right, so James,
why are you telling people the sausage is made?
NHL teams, James, cannot talk to players until noon Eastern time. They must also stop at stop signs for a full 3 seconds.
So why didn't we go on the air at 2 p.m. or something like that in this case?
No kidding.
Bob is buzz-killing us again here. Quick reaction, first of all, to the Montreal-St. Louis deal, Craig.
When you build up your prospect pool in one area, you now can go solidify it in another area. That's exactly what Montreal did with Bolduc. They have enough defensemen. Logan Mailloux looks like he was going to get squeezed out. Zach Bolduc's a really good offensive player, and they can use offense.
Frankie Corrado, who covers the Habs for us a lot during the year, your thoughts?
Trade for the Montreal Canadiens because you're bringing in a forward now where you need a little offense up front. And Logan Mailloux, we saw David Reinbacher play really well in the AHL playoffs for Laval. And now, like Craig said, this is a position of strength as far as defense. So you move on from a player, but they didn't go and spend money that they didn't need to spend just to do it, to get a forward. They made a trade that made a lot of sense for them. And this is a smart move by the Montreal Canadiens.
All right, as promised, we're going to get to our Western Canadian teams. And Gord made the joke about a little mini trade center as we see Ryan Rishaug in Edmonton, Glenn Schiller in Winnipeg, Farhan Lalji in Vancouver, and Salim Valji in Calgary. Let's start with Ryan in Edmonton, because that was another trade made this morning as Victor Arvidsson gets traded to the Boston Bruins, and that's a clear they need cap space, correct, Ryan?
Yeah, 100%. We saw a move involving Evander Kane a number of days ago, cleared over $5 million. This one clears over $4 million, James. The Edmonton Oilers need to figure out a way to come back next season better than they were this year, right? You can make the argument they didn't necessarily do that last year. They need to take a step forward. Look what the Florida Panthers just did, right? The Vegas Golden Knights just made themselves better. This is a cup contending team in its window. They need to get better. So how do you do that? You try and find someone to play next to Leon Draisaitl on the team's second line, right? They platooned a couple of different players through there this last year. Victor Arvidsson just dealt. It never worked out. Jeff Skinner, they thought potentially could work out. That didn't happen. So I think with the space that they've cleared here, they're sitting right around $4 million, give or take a little bit, depending on who stays up and who goes down. But I think the Oilers will be top 6 forward hunting. Potential for them to move some more cap space out. James will keep an eye on Adam Henrique. Has a full no movement clause. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But if they want to be big game hunting, that's a trade they may have to try and find as well.
Ryan Rishaug out in Edmonton covering the Oilers for us. Just before I get to Glenn in Winnipeg, the reason Glenn is in Winnipeg today is because John Lu, after 25 years with TSN, has retired. Great years in Montreal and the last part of his career in Winnipeg. We will miss his insight, we'll miss his fashion, and we'll just miss a really good guy in John Lu. We wish John Lu the best in his retirement. Glenn Schiller covering the Jets for us. And Nikolai Ehlers, I suppose, is the big name that a lot of teams with a kind of limited talent out there on the market will be looking at today, and has said it's not impossible for him to come back to Winnipeg, but looks not very likely at this point, Glenn.
Yeah, that's right, James. Right now, I've got a tough act to follow in John Lu, but whoever's going to replace Nikolai Ehlers should he depart Winnipeg, talk about a tough act to follow. Ehlers completing his 10th season here with the Jets, and last season was essentially a point-per-game player, such a big part of this #1 ranked power play as well. Also, some offseason priorities for Kevin Cheveldayoff. You speak of scoring, Kyle Connor, as of today, is eligible to sign a long-term extension, and his 41 goals were tied for 7th in the NHL. 97 points were 7th in scoring across the league as well. So Connor and an extension with the Jets will be a priority this offseason. And you got some restricted free agents, key names like Gabe Vilardi, who had 27 goals. That's the most of any restricted free agent in the National Hockey League. And Dylan Sandberg as well, who was second on the Jets in time on ice in the playoffs. Such an important player here in Winnipeg. And maybe the biggest offseason news for the Jets already happened, James. Jonathan Toews, the hometown boy, returning to the NHL about 10 days ago. The Jets announcing that. Toews will not be here today for the introductory news conference. That's expected to happen later this week on Friday, when we can ask Jonathan Toews about his return as a 37-year-old to the National Hockey League.
Yeah, can't wait to see him back in action, and he'll fit very nicely into a Winnipeg jersey. That's Glenn Schiller in Winnipeg. Let's move out to the West Coast and Farhan Lalji now in Vancouver. We have a goalie extension we'll get to in just a second with Farhan. But look, after what was a far too dramatic, very disappointing season in Vancouver, the priority shifts back to the ice, and priority #1 would have to be scoring.
Yeah, absolutely. This team didn't score enough a year ago, and now it looks like they're going to lose Brock Besser and Pius Suter. Each of them scored 25 goals a year ago, so where do you go? And I think Odog can attest to this. You know, sometimes it's 2 a.m., the bar's about to close, and whoever's still left there looks a whole lot better than they did a couple of hours ago, and that's where mistakes get made, and the Canucks can't go down that road. And even Jim Rutherford said that it might not get done at free agency. They might have to go to the trade market to get done what they'd like to get done, and they also have to potentially move out some money if they still want to get the top 6 forward and second line center that they so badly covet. They've got $7 million left after adding Evander Kane to that mix. So when you look at some of the names, Mikael Granlund, who's probably going to be too expensive because there's so much competition for that player, and then other names, Christian Dvorak from Montreal, Jack Roslovic from Carolina, other names that they're currently being tied to. So it's a tough situation. You talk about the goaltending. Now they've got a glut there, so potentially they could move on from somebody there to create some space.
All right, Farhan Lalji in Vancouver. Our last stop out west is Calgary. And Salim Valji getting some business done today. Craig Conroy and company. Joel Hanley gets an extension.
Yeah, James, that might be the biggest move they make. I don't see them being active at all, and they have $20 million in cap space, but as we've talked about a bunch, this is a team that's turning over its roster to young players, so I can see them going in the backup goalie market. I don't think the door's shut on Dan Vladar by any means, and beyond that, James, they were one of the worst face-off teams in the league last season, and they paid for not having a right-handed centerman, so I think if they can get a right-shooting center who can win face-offs, that's another priority, but the kids are all right here in Calgary, James, and as a result, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of movement as the roster continues to be turned over to the likes of Matt Coronado and Dustin Wolf.
As you were looking at these are not depth charts. We're only going as far as salaries and cap hits, and we'll get back to Salim Valji if something indeed does happen in Calgary as the day go on. As we mentioned off the top, it's been the year of the rat. We got fancy virtual reality stuff going on here. It wasn't just a triumph for Brad Marchand, it was for the Panthers. But as a whole, look at where Marchand has done. 21 goals with Boston. He wins the Four Nations, traded to Florida, Stanley Cup champion, re-signs with Florida. I think Brad would appreciate that graphic, actually. Just an incredible year for Marchand and for the Florida Panthers. And so we have what have become, I guess, for everybody else, it's not a Panthers fan or a Vegas fan, two of the villains of the NHL, the Panthers and Vegas. For more on that, Brian Hayes and his panel.
All right, thank you, James. And here with our friend Emily Kaplan from ESPN, Carlo Koliakovo. You're right, it is Canada Day, but we're going to talk about two teams that couldn't be further away from the Canadian border. That's the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights, the two most aggressive teams in the league. You just mentioned Florida, right? They win a Stanley Cup, they bring back Marchand, they bring back Ekblad, they bring back Sam Bennett. Look at Vegas. Big news yesterday, Alex Pietrangelo announces he likely won't play again, which is significant. That's a big piece. They waited about 5 minutes to fulfill the cap hit and the talent. They go out and get Mitch Marner. So if you're every other team in the league, Emily, you're looking at Vegas, you're looking at Florida. Is that the blueprint, that aggressiveness that you need to apply if you want to catch up?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's just a state tax advantage. I don't think it's just being able to exploit the LTIR loophole. I don't think it's just the ruthless commitment to winning, the culture that they built, the amenities the players are offered off the ice, the ability to go and walk into public and not be swarmed by fans. It's all of those things. And I think there's another thing that these teams offer that nobody talks enough about, and that's the warm weather. I know I sound like an absolute kook here, but I remember talking to Brad Marchand shortly after he got traded there, just how much better his body felt. Think of how well he healed from his injury, the ability to extend your career. There's all these studies about the benefits of direct exposure to sunlight amongst waking up. So it's all of those things that teams aren't able to match if you're not those markets. Yes, other GMs should look at that blueprint and be more aggressive, but there are some GMs that are that aggressive. I think of GM Eric Tulsky in Carolina. I think of Chris McFarland in Colorado. They offer some of those things. It's just hard to match all of them.
Yeah, Emily, you bring up some great points. I mean, every team would love for better weather and maybe more better tax advantages. But aside from that, I think what stands out with these two organizations is that they're not afraid to make the big swing. They don't care if they win or lose a trade. They're going after the player, and if it doesn't work out, they move on. And I think that's what some of the other teams maybe need to catch up on is don't be scared to make that bold move. Go out, do it, find the player that you want that's going to help your team, and if it doesn't work out, you move on. That's what these teams do year after year. Florida's found a formula with those three players. They found a way to keep them. Vegas, year after year, they sign guys to long-term extension. If they don't like the way they work out, they move on. That's what separates these two teams from everybody else.
Yeah, the aggressiveness is so significant, right? You want your players to be comfortable when they're there away from the rink, but when they're on the ice, they better be ready to perform because that's a huge part of the mentality. You're right. 100%. All the other things count for something, maybe count for a lot, but the idea that the mantra from top down is you better win. You better help us win. If you don't, you won't be here for long. James?
All right, thank you, gang. Let's look at the current Stanley Cup odds for next year, and maybe we'll check in at the end of the day and see if they have changed by the movements on this day. No surprise, Florida at plus 700. Carolina, it's a little strange, but it's part of the division thing. We saw this when the Stanley Cup playoffs started, when they were the favorite at plus 750. Edmonton in there at number 3, then Dallas, Colorado, Vegas at 950, Tampa. There's a big gap there between Vegas and then Tampa, Jersey, the LA Kings, and Winnipeg round out the top 10 at plus 2,300.
Hasn't won a game.
So we are just moments away from the first hour of free agency. Bob mentioned we might not see the numbers that we've seen in past years because of the fear of tampering, but it's usually a huge number hour. 27 players signed for a mind-boggling $470 million in hour number one last year, which represented a massive increase over 2023 when 22 players signed for a collective $102 million. Maybe we won't see that $470 million total today, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what time we get our first signing. Who is going to be the first one who maybe waits a little bit longer.
1-year deal.
Qualifying offers. Yeah, exactly. It was a really quick negotiation. Let's quickly run through our top 20. Of course, it's been butchered by what happened yesterday, but Nikolai Ehlers and Gavrikov and Besser, you'll probably hear a lot about those three today. Jake Allen, cross him off the list as he re-signs for that 5-year, $1.8 million per year deal with the New Jersey Devils. Dmitry Orlov is at number 6. The Vancouver Canuck. Pius Suter is at number 7. Schmidt, Lindgren, and Jonathan Drouin at number 10. Drouin coming off a $4.3 million AAV. Jack Roslovic is at number 11. Corey Perry. Wherever Corey Perry signs, we know he's going to the Stanley Cup final. Right? It's just a deal. Klingberg, Brown, and Vladar, 11 through 15. And then rounding out to 20, Cody Ceci, Victor Olofsson, Brent Burns still around into his 40s. Andrew Mangiapane would be a great pickup for somebody. And Nick Perbix rounds up our top 20. So we saw this on trade deadline. We're here for 6 hours no matter what, although there was some confusion at 3 o'clock Eastern during Trade Center because somebody thought the show was over.
Can you mow through two or three of them? That's a heavy task, man.
Sit back down. You got 2 hours still here. Get him back. Security. I don't even remember. Did we lure him back or did he actually just leave for the entire day? You realize the show is not over. And particularly on this show, that was at least 6 or 7 hours into that show. We're only an hour into this show, so when you hear the little bells or the horn or whatever happens 20 seconds from now, you cannot leave.
I'm out.
No, you're not leaving at 3 o'clock.
It's my new number. I'm out of here.
You're stuck here until 5 p.m. Eastern time, and then you can go play golf for the rest of the summer.
Signing at 5. They already got this stuff. It's going to be a couple great hours, and then we're all out of here.
If it's late, like Bob says, we're going to extend it. We may extend it to 10 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah,
there it is. There's the bell. No horn like Trade Center.
Let's get back to the reporters back there. Trade breakers.
So the free agency period is officially underway. Again, over the past few years, insiders have probably announced a dozen deals already done, but Bill Daly and company have perhaps struck the fear into agents and players. So we'll see right now how long it takes before we get deals that are officially announced here on the Frenzy. Again, $470 million spent in the first hour
is officially
last
here,
year.
everybody.
It may take a little bit longer this year. So who are you waiting for? Who excites you most about this list, considering all the guys? Is it Ehlers? Is it Besser? What do you want to see, Mike?
I mean, obviously, Ehlers, I think, is such a good fit for so many players, and he can help good players on good teams that are Stanley Cup aspirational kind of teams. So we'll watch him. It appears as though he's searching for a market fit, not just a team fit, where maybe he's not craving the limelight or the attention away from the rink. He just wants to focus on the ice. So we'll see what happens with him. To me, I think he's the best offensive player still out there. So we'll see where he goes and for how much. Oh, and will he push 9? I mean, given supply demand, I'm going back to grade 10 economics. The supply is so limited. Could he get $9 million a year?
Well, it depends if those teams that are so far below the floor, how much do they really want to go nuts? And it's difficult to do this, but I can't stop doing it. Every signing, I think about the Florida Panthers. It's like, I always think, well, who would he be on the Florida Panthers? Or how could he help beat the Florida Panthers? So any guy that signs a contract today, I'll always have that in the back of my mind. How does that kind of compare to the Florida Panthers and what they believe and what they do, how they pay guys, and how it's all going to work out?
Well, to Mike's point, when, demand exceeds supply, prices go up. And the price is going up.
Yeah, but Craig, teams get really stupid then.
Yeah,
we're going to be blown away by a couple of
That's what ends up happening. That's just
Ehlers,
economic
Gavrikov,
fact.
I think Besser will probably surprise you. And maybe Granlund, too.
I wonder if there's a defeatist attitude at all with teams out there because of what you just said, because of what Florida has right now. you look at this list with no offense to any of these players who are talented. There's nobody here that's going to go, man, if we get this guy, we can really challenge the Panthers, right?
Exactly.
And it also raises the question, too, and we were talking about it, Craig, you know, whether GMs are going to hold, they're going to be a little more patient and hold that cap space into the season so where they can get value on a trade and really hit a piece that will have an impact in their roster and fill a hole versus just going out and getting a complementary piece or another complementary piece and paying up the wazoo for it.
If you're Craig Conroy, you're Chris Drury, you're Kevin Adams, Conroy with Anderson, Drury with K'Andre Miller, and Kevin Adams with Bowen Byram, you might be in a great position to make a great trade for your team. And that's where the teams, to your point, can you sit back and get one of those guys that can make a difference to your blue line?
But isn't the conversation this year about this entire market, too many teams are trying to get better.
Yep.
Not enough teams are okay with being poor for a few more years.
I look at it a different way, Johnny. I think teams are absolutely fooling themselves if they think they're anywhere near getting better. They're not.
Well, but they're trying to get better. So you're not going to be like,
I get it. You can't just sit back and say we're terrible.
Like Florida or Boston or Buffalo doesn't want to trade Byram and take futures. They need players.
Yep.
But if you're trading Byram to a team that's really good, they're not giving you players that could help them win right away. That mix is hard. Unless you're going to trade them to a team that's
we still have 5 more hours, guys, and we want to pace definitely the last 5 hours. So for now, as we enter the free agent period, let's send it over to Gord Miller and the Insiders.
Hasn't Ho been pacing himself for like 30 years?
Basically.
So the time has come. Teams can start talking, and the most talked about free agent is Nikolai Ehlers. And Bob, what's the latest?
Well, there's obviously considerable interest in the, at this point, former Winnipeg Jet winger, and lots of interest. We know Carolina's interested. We believe Washington's interested, Colorado Avalanche, Toronto Maple Leafs, any number of teams. And the phone calls are going to start going into his Swiss-based agent, Andre Rufner. Ehlers himself played some golf this morning and now is obviously settling in for the process that's going to happen. And over the course of the day, there's going to be conversations with general managers. There's going to be conversations with NHL coaches to understand the role that Nikolai Ehlers might have, as well as obviously all the financial considerations that go on. But the expectation from the agent, Andre Rufner in Switzerland, is that Nikolai Ehlers is not likely, not expected to make a decision on his future today. So if that's the case, then the guy who's probably the most sought-after guy may well carry over until tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where Nikolai Ehlers lands, because there are some who believe that one of the reasons that he wanted to fully test the open market is because he didn't love the spotlight of a Canadian city. And that's saying something when you look at the small market of Winnipeg. So now you look at, okay, well, who's the next best forward on that list? Or you put Brock Besser on the same level of Nikolai Ehlers. And there's double-digit teams that are lined up for Brock Besser. He is going to have a tough decision to make. I mean, multiple options with
Brock Besser is going to
with
end
the
up
money,
American team
longer
for sure.
term with maybe less money for the contending teams that have interest. So, of course, Winnipeg wants Brock Besser to replace Nikolai Ehlers, but pretty much every Canadian team. Here's a long shot for you. What about the Edmonton Oilers? I mean, they moved Victor Arvidsson. Now, they've got to create cap space, right? Because they've got the Draisaitl contract kicking in. They just extended Evan Bouchard. They moved Evander Kane to the Vancouver Canucks. I'm not saying Edmonton should be a front runner in the conversation around Brock Besser, but I do know that they are among the Canadian teams that are at least exploring that option.
Now, meantime, what you want to be today is in demand because there's not much supply. And that would be the case for Vladislav Gavrikov, the defenseman formerly of the LA Kings.
Yeah, once Aaron Ekblad and Ivan Provorov re-signed and stayed put yesterday, the cash machine went crazy for Vladislav Gavrikov because he is in class by himself today. No offense to Orlov or Ryan Lindgren or other UFAD, but Gavrikov is the cream of the crop, and there is serious interest. The New York Rangers are absolutely one of the teams that have interest. Detroit was going to go after Ekblad, I believe. They would try on Gavrikov in the next few hours here. CAA, his reps are going to work through the offers here and get to a place. But I will say this. I believe there's a very reasonable chance for Gavrikov to get at least, if not more than Provorov, who got $8.5 million to stay in Columbus.
One of the big stories from last year's free agency day was the offer sheets to Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. St. Louis signed them both offer sheets and landed both players. We have seen offer sheets now and then over the last decade or so. What about this year?
I'll tell you, this is one of the favorite barroom conversations around the NHL this year is, are there going to be more now? Does it affect anything? Does the rising cap help or hurt? Well, we're going to now find out, right? We're on the happy side of noon for the restricted free agents. They're formally allowed to speak with teams. And there's certainly, even on this day, some buzz that we could see an offer sheet. But I can't sit here and tell you with 100% certainty whether we will or not. The ranges go from a third-round pick as compensation all the way up to the most pricey contracts for first-rounders. But, you know, bless our man Frankie Corrado. He's making the free agent list. There's not a lot of shopping to be done out there, and so maybe RFAs are going to be the solution for some teams.
I could be in the minority on this. I just don't see I don't think you're going to see the big name offer sheet. I think if you see some this summer, it's going to be the mid-range guys because the compensation is not as difficult to absorb.
Let's clip that.
Yeah,
well, I'd actually take the other side of that bet.
And the reason is the cap is going up, and teams haven't jammed themselves as much as the Oilers were a year ago.
Well, but define a top player, though. I mean, Matthew Nyes he's under contract with the Leafs. So beyond that, when you're looking at the RFAs, look at Mike Johnson's looking at us.
I'm taking the LeBron's. I'm
with LeBron. 4.7 second rounder.
Yeah, that's what
a good middle six player.
Yeah.
Okay, such as
who?
Will Cooley.
Will Cooley.
There's a good example.
Okay.
It's a good example.
Clip that. James?
Well, one of the things, too, and maybe you don't get above that
threshold
that leads to, as we look at Nikolai Ehlers and his numbers as he's number one on our list right now, 63 points last year, 520 in his career. What's been a really good career with the Winnipeg Jets. But just carrying on what we were talking about there,
listen, if you get into the area where you spend enough
on an offer sheet that you would have to give up a first-round pick, you have Gavin McKenna lurking next year, and we saw what happened in the lottery this year, where the Islanders went all the way up. Would there be a fear of giving up a first-rounder in that year when Gavin McKenna could come to you in a lottery if you were in that bottom tier of the league?
It's the Leafs' mistake, right? They never thought they'd be bad enough to warrant being out of the playoffs until you are, and there goes Dougie Hamilton, Tyler Seguin. Like, if you miscalculate that badly, you would never do it risking a first-round pick if you thought you could ever miss the playoffs. But it could happen, and then the worst case would be, obviously.
Well, to your point, I mean, you talk about teams in desperation mode. They're not thinking about missing the playoffs. They're thinking about making the playoffs and getting after players that they think will get there. And then the vulnerability. Look at the New York Rangers. They won the President's Trophy in 23-24. They're out of the playoffs this year. I mean, they ended up giving the pick to the Pittsburgh Penguins, but what happens if that all of a sudden gets to be a higher pick? They weren't banking on that.
No. You heard the guys say Nikolai Ehlers, and the belief is that maybe he'd like to get out of the Canadian market and go somewhere a little bit quieter. We just saw Mitch Marner, after being in the spotlight of Toronto, going to Vegas. We don't know 100% what Mitch's reasons are, but, belief maybe to get out of the fishbowl that is Toronto. Does that concern you? Two guys who played for Canadian teams here. Some guys love it. Some guys don't love it. Some guys love it for a while and then get sick of it.
I think the concern is, James, and my dad brought this to my attention years ago. He just said the way things are going now with players kind of demanding where they're going to be at and not being happy in Canadian, it's going to be like the haves and have-nots at the NHL. And we're seeing markets where, whether it be tax, weather, good team, it's like out of the 32 teams, how many are dying to go to certain markets? It seems like there's certain markets out there, whether it be the good team, the lifestyle, and it's the who's who of the NHL. And that's
why would you want to play in the Canadian market?
So, I mean, I played for Toronto, Montreal. I played for Tampa and Phoenix.
$4 million.
And I loved playing in Canada. I liked it so much more than playing in America. And I played a no state tax. I got raised when I got traded down to Tampa. I've had my best years of my career in Arizona. But when I got back to Montreal, and I was no longer on the first line, I was on the third line there. I loved it. Lifestyle-wise, hockey-wise, I probably wasn't as happy because I didn't get to score as much. But lifestyle and playing in a market that's passionate, that cares. And now I get it. It's different. Social media, the way fans get out and touch you now and contact you is very different than it was, 15 years ago. But as far as enjoying the experience of playing somewhere where it matters, where they care, where people want to see you, like, hey, great job last night.
Yeah, well, Mitch Marner could probably attest to it. He probably I loved going to the rink in a Canadian market. You're seeing the fans, you're seeing the excitement around the city. But he probably also couldn't stand people throwing stuff on his front lawn.
Well, that's exactly.
So
that's exactly
it is fair.
Right?
Who would want to deal with that?
Especially when you have a and then it gets maybe more tricky when you have a family. If you have kids, and kids are going to be going to school, and they know dad played last night and was -3 with a bad pizza. You don't want your 5-year-old dealing. Like, I get that kind of stuff, but as a person who didn't have kids, well, I had kids in Montreal, but I loved it. I like this idea that everyone doesn't like Montreal. Now, I am from Toronto, and I am a proud Canadian. I love playing in Canada.
Well, it is. To me, it's that social media because that transcends, right? That hits different people. And so, as an athlete, you didn't really have to face that nearly as much. Mm-hmm. Certainly I was playing at a different breadth, only playing for my national team, not only, but sort of we didn't have to go through that every day. But for you guys, you weren't scrolling through your X account, right? Which I'm sure a lot of these guys try and put away, but it's still there.
Yeah, that's an easy answer.
When you turn on the radio.
Don't go on there.
Well, it really is. Like, come on. Like, if somebody knocks on your door and you open up the door and they start screaming at you, you slam the door. And you can slam your social media. Bob Gainey signed you. Mm-hmm. Bob Gainey said this very well. He said, is Montreal for everybody? No. Is Toronto for everybody? No. But if you get into those markets and you embrace it and you love being part of it, it's special. Yeah. And I think the guys that don't want to play, don't get them.
When I got to Toronto, there was a lot of stories about having fun on the back of the bus and guys winning playoff series. Nobody had a problem when there was winning. It's almost like when they lose, they don't want to have any kind of accountability for it, where it's like, oh, we're in Canada. This sucks losing here. Well, try winning. I don't know. It kind of it's a weird thing.
1,000%, man.
The highs are higher, the lows get a little bit lower.
Yeah. People are going to carry you on their shoulders all the way down.
Then you don't have to have those experiences when you play in some markets.
We played golf a couple of days ago. This is a plug for the match that airs after the free agent frenzy with Brendan Gallagher and Nazem Kadri. Gallagher's spent his whole career in Montreal. Kadri's been in Toronto. In Calgary, won a cup in the middle in Colorado. Both of them just love every bit of playing in a Canadian market. Let's send it back over to Takia and Frankie.
All right, Frankie, let's talk about defensemen, okay? On the top of our list, we've got Gavrikov at number 1. He's top 5 in our UFA list. It sounds like he's looking for big money, though. What can you tell us about him?
He's going to get big money, and you know who he has to thank? Aaron Ekblad and Ivan Provorov, because they're off the board, and all of a sudden you take a look at this and you're like, who is a prime top 4 guy who can handle big minutes offensively, but most importantly, defensively, a good shutdown guy, and that is Vladislav Gavrikov. So it makes a lot of sense that there's going to be teams that missed out on those players that say, we want this guy, and he's going to get paid. There's just not much available lower on the board that would make a better fit than Vladislav Gavrikov. And so you look at some of the clips here as far as how he plays the game, can think the game, can jump in offensively, but you're getting him for his defensive awareness and how he can play in his defensive zone. One quick note when we look at the defensive players, though. This guy right here, Dmitry Orlov, who's second on our list, 2 years ago, he was our top player on the board. He opted to take a 2-year deal at $7.75 million, thinking, salary cap's going up, I'm going to cash in a big way. And as you can see here, we have his projected AAV a little bit lower than what he was making currently, but he can probably thank those two guys, Ekblad and Provorov, because now all of a sudden he becomes a little more coveted by teams.
All right, so we touched on the top 2. Let's talk about Nate Schmidt, because we saw Florida make a few big moves in the past couple days. Is Nate Schmidt on his way out, though?
Well, you would have to think that he is. Now, you can never say never with the Florida Panthers because they'll just find a way. The one thing that's working for, I guess, their favor or another team that might be crunched up against the cap is Nate Schmidt still getting paid by the Winnipeg Jets. He got bought out there, so he can be in that same category as someone like Matt Duchene, who's in a position to do a team a favor because he's got a little supplemental money coming in on the side. As far as what Nate Schmidt brings to the table, he was so good in the playoffs for the Florida Panthers and provided more than what you would expect from a third-pairing defenseman. So I would imagine if you're a team looking to make an upgrade, you look at Nate Schmidt and say he can still play. We saw him do it in the playoffs, and we can maybe get a little bit of a discount because he's still getting paid on the side.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, Nate Schmidt, a ton of playoff experience, 99 playoff games in his career.
Thank you, guys. So, well, this is already a bit of a historic free agent frenzy in the sense that we've been doing this for, I don't know what, 15 years ago when Bob McKenzie invented it. And every single year at noon, there has been a ton of signings.
Nobody wants to be the first one.
Yeah, well, Bob said it. Nobody wants to be the first one because of the fear of tampering.
What's the appropriate amount of time it can take to do a 4-year contract?
Yeah, they've probably
35 minutes.
Test runs. They've done test runs. How long does it take?
We have one signing. Glenn Gullickson's the head coach of the Dallas Stars.
Oh, there you go. They worked out that contract.
Announced. That one didn't have to wait till the Eastern time. They could have announced that contract earlier, but we congratulate Glenn as he takes on the job of the head coach of the Dallas Stars. Let's send it back to Gino and his goalie panel.
All right, a little while ago, you guys were talking about...
Gino, before, I signed at 12:01 in 2010.
That was a fast negotiation.
Deal at 12:01. It took a minute. That was great. I was all set.
Hey, Marty, you in for this number? Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
Sign. Let me get back to my Canada Day celebration. Yeah, sure. Someday you'll tell us what's going on. Listen, a few minutes ago, you guys were talking about what happens when demand exceeds supply.
Yeah.
And that's in the general market. That's obviously going on in goaltending right now. There are teams who are the haves, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have a 1A, 1B goaltender in Woll and Stolarz. And there are teams that are in huge need and would pay, maybe overpay. So here's the question. And the reason we're asking this question, because it got a little heated a few minutes ago here. Let me start with Marty. Should the Leafs be willing to part with one of their goaltenders to take advantage of a huge demand to maybe get over what they would get in a regular return to fill holes elsewhere in their roster?
So obviously I mentioned Joseph Woll earlier, and the reason why I'd be looking at trading Joseph Woll is because the plan wasn't to have Anthony Stolarz come in and play so well, #1 in the league in save percentage last year, and be their #1. The plan was for Woll to be that guy. His new contract's going to kick in, 3 years at over $3 million. So it's still very good for other teams to say, hey, that's a number we can deal with. But right now the demand is like, teams would be looking for. But isn't that an enormous
risk?
Wow. But it's a risk, but you still have Hildeby and you have Akhtiamov that you can say, or you can go and get a cheap backup on the free agent market. But if you're going to get a return that can fill in your needs right now, the Leafs are looking for a top 6 winger that can replace, well, I'm not saying replace Marner, but kind of fill in the top 6 right there. Maybe you can get that done with Joseph Woll. So that's why I'm saying if the return is what you're looking for, why not do it? You have Stolarz, and he can do a fine job.
He can do a fine job, but the most he's ever played in a season was 34 games. That's what he did last year. That's backup minutes now. That's not even starting minutes. Yes, Stolarz was fantastic last year, but they did it as a tandem. That was my biggest challenge. So, yes, that is a position of strength. And you just talked about it, Hildeby. Hildeby did not play very well at the National Hockey League level last year. He still needs some progression. I'm not even going to try his name. Akhtiamov. He's a good young goaltender. They just call him Artie. Artie's a really good young goaltender, but he needs growth with the Marlies. So if what you're suggesting is take a position of strength and weaken it for somewhere else, and now all of a sudden you're one injury away from having zero depth. So I wouldn't look at that if you're me.
All right, we need a tiebreaker. So Marty says move Woll right now, bring back a great asset, more than you would ordinarily. Noodle says no way. Weeksy, where do you land on this?
Yeah, well, my teacher, Mr. Manga, always told us at Bethune High School there in Scarborough about supply and demand, and he made us watch Venture every time when it was on to understand that. And no more applicable than it is for the goalie market. If I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs, I stand pat because both goalies played exceptionally well last year in a tandem. So I wouldn't move Joseph Woll. I wouldn't move on from him. If I'm the Edmonton Oilers, of course I'd be coveting Joseph Woll. If I'm some other teams, of course I'd be coveting him as well. But if I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs, we're dealing from a position of strength with those two guys. Unless Felix Potvin's coming back, unless Ed Belfour's coming back, they don't have that in the net right now. But the two guys that they have played very well together. I wouldn't make the move.
My man, we were the same numbers, 0-0. I thought you were going to be on my team. Let's
Let me know which team you root for, which team is your team, and who you want your team to get.
Don't you need to sometimes take a risk? We're on a new day right now under Brad Treliving, where nothing is off the table. We're seeing him getting hometown discounts. We're seeing him make deals that you thought, wow, how did he get that? Matthew Nyes, he got a great friendly contract. Is this a new era for the Toronto Maple Leafs where you're saying, no, we're going to deal from a position of strength, and this is the time for us to do it right now?
But you don't weaken your organization by doing that.
But Noodles, don't you have to get weaker in some areas to strengthen others?
Florida did it when they traded Devin Levi as a prospect, and then they traded Spencer Knight as a good young goaltender. They're saying we have two guys, but we need to get assets.
They have one guy who's played 159 games in the last 2 years. His name is goaltender Bob. They don't have goaltender Bob right now. You've got Stolarz, who played 34, and that's the most he's ever played in his career, and he's 31 years old. He's not 26, 27.
This is
Joseph
Toronto
Woll
media
played in 42
nutshell.
games last year.
The Leafs
so maybe
have to
he's
deal
the
from
guy
an area
that
of strength.
they can
So they trade
push to
Joseph
55
Woll,
games
and then in
if he
2
gets his
years they
body
get
in
to
order.
do a
I think
1 hour
Joseph Woll has
special
tremendous upside.
about how they
and I think
traded
Anthony
Tuukka
Stolarz has gotten
then
better
they
with
traded
time.
Joseph
But
Woll,
they're good in that
drafted
tandem
and developed by
situation.
the Leafs,
If you
and
had
they
a
won
standalone guy
somewhere
like
else.
goaltender Bob,
This is
then you're
typical.
going, yeah. Trade whoever's
Typical
number 2.
Toronto
You can
media.
see that. Spencer Knight, way you go. But in the end,
They don't have goaltender Bob. They don't have a #1 guy, a Vasilevsky, somebody who can play
Noodles
60
is
games.
just
It's a tandem.
right
That's
now.
where you're going to weaken that situation.
And for me, it's a copycat league, and right now all GMs should look at what the Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers and even
Vegas
Colorado
Golden
last
Knights
year
are dropping
revamping
off
their
shoots.
crease.
All
Like
their
they won
players
one
are
period
old,
away
they're
against
hurt,
Dallas,
their goaltending
and Mikko
sucks.
Rantanen getting a hat trick to advancing and potentially saying, hey, we're
They
the
don't
team
have
to beat
Robin
in the
Lehner
West now. So I'm looking at be aggressive, see an opportunity, see what's out there. Just, you know what? Get the phone calls going.
On top of all this, I think one thing that should be the focus is that teams don't put enough resources into their goaltending.
Well,
You take
that's
a
true.
look at Roberto Luongo.
Imagine the goalie saying that.
Yeah, you're right, though. Leo Luongo, Roberto Luongo, Rob Tallis, they created that goaltender development program. And guess what happened? They rebuilt Bob.
Yeah.
They've had goaltenders that have had
Sean
success.
Burke in Vegas.
Sean Burke in Vegas. To me, there's organizations that need to put a lot more money into that position.
Imagine that. The Toronto Maple Leafs dealing from a position of strength in net, James.
Marty, I have one more question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
What was the year you said you signed it 1 minute after?
2010.
Okay,
with the New York
2010.
Rangers.
There's no retroactive tampering. You need to take us behind the curtain. When did you agree to that deal? The morning of, the night before, a week before? Need to know.
It was the night before, but I'll tell you this, James. I was given permission from the New York Islanders and Garth Snow to explore the market. So, but yes, we had kind of talked numbers, and yes, so it was all fine, no problem.
If you are
the NHL's on the line.
If you do get fined, ODOG has agreed to pay the fine for you if it's anything below $100. Hey, the seal has been broken. We actually have signings. We wondered who would be first, so we got a couple. We believe the first was Jack Rathbone, defenseman who signs with Buffalo 2 years at an AAV of $1.55 million. Christian Dvorak joins the Philadelphia Flyers on a 1-year deal at $5.4 million. And it looks like Parker Kelly is re-signing with Colorado on a 4-year deal, just waiting for the terms on that. So no more waiting. Everybody who was waiting and being careful, you can now announce your contracts because we have our first signings here on the Free Agent Frenzy. Let's send it over to Brian Hayes.
All right, thanks, James. And one name you did mention there would be Corey Perry, who is still out there as a UFA. We've hit noon Eastern, so technically he can speak with whoever he wants to. I think he wants to stay in Edmonton. That's been the belief. The Oilers would like to keep him, but he might be looking at what Jamie Benn got down in Dallas, what Claude Giroux got in Ottawa. In other words, bonus-laden deals. So he can make more money if he plays and they have success. Emily, he goes to the Cup final every single year. Should Edmonton be all in on keeping Corey Perry?
You know, I was shocked when I found out that this wasn't going to be a done deal before free agency opened. I mean, when Zach Hyman went out, it was Corey Perry they turned to go on Connor McDavid's wing. McDavid told me he is one of the smartest players I've ever played with, and we know what he offers on the ice. It's the intangibles, too. Remember, he was the guy that gave that speech in Game 4 that galvanized them for that big comeback. So I don't think the door is closed on Edmonton. I just know that we got to this point. There's so many other teams that want to talk to him, and Perry, for the last 6 years, hasn't made more than $1.5 million and has obviously outplayed that. So I'm curious to see what else is out there for him, but I don't necessarily know if the door is closed in Edmonton because he wants to win. The guys there feel like they have something special, and what other team has a better opportunity than that, maybe besides the Florida Panthers that have been to 2 straight Stanley Cup finals?
Well, Emily, you took the words right out of my mouth, Ace, because, yeah, there's a ton of teams that would love Corey Perry's services. He's the good luck charm. He's the guy that helps get you to the finals. I mean, you just look at the record that he has. He's only got 1 cup, but he's been to 6 Stanley Cup finals
or something like that.
Teams want Corey Perry, but what does Corey Perry want? What if Corey Perry wants the Florida Panthers?
You're saying Kevin Durant, you want him to go Kevin Durant
full
here?
Kevin, this guy needs to win another Stanley Cup. And with the way the Florida Panthers have revamped and have, loaded up their roster again to make another run, why doesn't he choose the Florida Panthers, sign a league minimum deal, pile it with bonuses that the veterans can do it like we've seen other guys do it, and chase a cup with the 2-time
Florida feel they need Corey Perry, though?
Well,
That's the thing. He's a great player, obviously. He's not a young guy anymore. Florida, I think, is pretty set.
I don't think Florida needs anything.
No, it doesn't seem that way.
Adding Corey Perry just adds to the luxury of that group. And you put Corey Perry in that mix, too? I mean, you talk about the rats in the league.
Well, that's a great point, isn't it, Emily? Like, if you put Corey Perry down there, I don't know how the rest of the league could possibly deal with that. The Florida Panthers adding a guy like Perry, I don't see it happening, but his DNA, like what he represents, as you said, Emily, a lot of teams in the league that think they're that close to winning, he would have huge value for them.
Yeah, he's an identity guy. And I think the one aspect we didn't talk about, we're saying about Florida being the toast of the league, they find culture guys that come in and are so sacrificial. They don't care about their personal stats. They just want to win. And that's the kind of guy that I know Corey Perry is. I'm just asking, how can the Florida Panthers fit him in after keeping their 3 big UFAs? Like, they love their fourth line. They kept their fourth line together. Like, I don't even know if there's room for him in this lineup. I think there's other corresponding moves they'd have to make. So, yeah, sure, he'd be a perfect Florida Panther. I can think of another handful of guys that'd be perfect Florida Panthers. The salary cap only went up so much. We can't fit them all in.
Right, exactly. Like, the state tax is one thing, but they're not playing by different rules.
Just play for free.
Than everyone else. Well, Brad Treliving, famously GM of the Leafs, after they went out in the second round to Florida, said, we need a DNA change here in Toronto. It's not Brad Marchand, who we thought maybe the Leafs would kick tires on if he got to free agency, but Perry definitely would represent that.
How do you not look at Corey Perry? I mean, I get you can look at his age and say, no, I don't want any part in that, but Emily just talked about all the intangibles he brings into a locker room. And if he can help you get over the hump because he understands what it takes to win in the playoffs, I mean, you're not going to pay an absorbent amount of money for him.
Bonuses are one thing, but it's not going to be a crazy amount of money.
If I'm the Maple Leafs, I 100% look at Corey Perry to bring him in and add him to my group.
Yeah, I think Craig Berube would be pretty happy with that as well. And again, he gets to the Cup final.
He gets
basically every year. You can stop the tape once you get there. But still, Perry, he's out there, James, and someone's definitely going to pay him, and I think a lot of teams are going to want him.
Corey Perry in Florida. that would be tantalizing.
Well, let me ask this question. Who thought Brad Marchand would end up in Florida?
Truth.
Right? So I don't think it's so far-fetched what Carlo just said with Corey Perry.
I mean, you're basically paying the league minimum at this point.
Sure,
in there and
maybe get a couple of bonuses.
But do you want to, like, I love Corey Perry. I love the way he still plays at his age. But just to look at that, I mean, we put up the board of all the years to the finals and lose.
Yeah.
Do you really want to bring that juju?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to go to the team that's a
100%.
favorite.
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to win one.
Yeah.
Yes.
It would really be.
Are you saying Florida doesn't want to bring his losing mojo?
that's
What
where
I'm
he's
saying
going.
is,
Well, they
it's
don't
to
want
the finals
McDavid
and
either.
lost. Like, do you want to kind of screw
Mess
around
with
with
that
that
mojo?
juju and be like, I don't know?
Oh, I think they'd be
Brad
happy to
Marchand
have
been in the
him.
finals.
Imagine the goalies they're playing against.
Ladies and
Oh,
gentlemen,
man.
we have our first guest of the day. He didn't sign today, but he signed yesterday. It's Aaron Ekblad, 2-time Stanley Cup champion. On a golf cart. Oh, now, if I didn't envy you enough already, after 2 cups, you're on a golf cart in Windsor, where we all kind of wish we were on this day. Listen, congratulations on the cup. Last time I spoke with you, we were standing on the ice in the moments afterwards. You told me how badly you wanted to come back to Florida. A few minutes later, Bill Zito said he was going to get all 3 of you guys signed, and he did it. Are you surprised at all that actually happened?
A little bit surprised. I mean, it's pretty impressive what he's able to do with our team and his cap gymnastics, but obviously pretty satisfied with the outcome.
Did the 3 of you guys, Bennett and Marchand, get together sometime during the parties and the days after and have a conversation or a group text about this and how badly you wanted to make it happen and how you were going to have to make it happen?
We had some conversations and stuff like that, not anything into specific contract details, just because, we kind of let our agents handle all that stuff and let Billy do what he does best. But yeah, we had some conversations about how much we wanted it. And obviously being together, makes our team better. And again, really satisfied with the outcome and pretty happy to have those guys with us and with me for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what you would have gotten on the open market? Probably several million more than the $6.1 million AAV you got, although the term at 8 years seemed to be primary to this contract. Did you, when you talked with your agent, were you just like, get this done no matter what? Did you ponder leaving, or was it always, I'm going to find a way to stay here no matter what?
Towards the end, it was obviously find a way to stay no matter what. When you start thinking about moving your entire life to a new city, and obviously my wife and I have a lot of great relationships that we've made in Florida. So there's tons of motivation to stay, and the group of guys is obviously one of the leading factors. So yeah, that was kind of it.
I read this out earlier on the show, and you know it full well. Barkov, Tkachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Verhaeghe, Marchand, Lundell, Jones, yourself, Forsling, all locked up until at least 2030. We haven't had a true maybe the definition of dynasties have changed. We've had repeat winners. We haven't had a dynasty in a long time in the National Hockey League. I would say 3 in a row would fit that mold. Handicap your chances of repeating and maybe pushing this window a few more years.
I know that pretty much all of the guys in our team are probably back in the gym. If not in the last few days, probably today. So guys are ready and hungry, and the short summers don't seem to bother us. We recover well. We do a great job as a team recovering throughout the season. That obviously makes our chances better and better.
Yeah, the problem with you guys is not just recovering from the season, it's recovering from the parties that come after you win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, having fun's all a big part of it, man. You gotta, keep your mentals good.
Listen, you're not necessarily at the bargaining table. Your agent's doing that. But what is it like to have Bill Zito as a GM who seems to be willing to do anything to make you guys a contender every single year?
Yeah, he's a shrewd negotiator. He obviously knows what he's doing, and he's he's been through a lot as a GM in his short time here, and he's done some pretty impressive things. So really pretty happy to have him around and respect him very much.
I hope you're not in the fairway waiting to hit your second shot and have 4 groups piled up behind you, Aaron.
That's exactly it.
Well, we're sorry we kept you far too long. Enjoy, have a great round, have a great summer, and thanks for joining us today.
All right, guys, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
There's Aaron Ekblad, part of the 2-time Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. Let's get right to Gordon Miller and some news.
Yeah, one of our big names has dropped. Brock Besser is going to...
He's staying. The Vancouver Canucks, 7-year deal, $7.25 million is the AAV per season. One of those classic situations where you actually go to market, but circle back to the team where you played your entire career. So pretty big deal for Vancouver.
So how much do you think this relates or affects the Ehlers situation when you take a guy like Besser off the market?
Maybe a little bit for sure, because when you're looking at the available forwards, there's one fewer now. But I would look to the tier beneath that and how that might influence, some of the decisions that are being made. And you look at, again, Winnipeg. Winnipeg was keen on Brock Besser. They weren't overconfident they were going to get him. They knew the level of interest, including Vancouver, the possibility of him staying there. But teams who have lost scoring, Winnipeg, Toronto, go down the list. Where are you going to find that, right? And as I said earlier, Nikolai Ehlers is a bit unique because of his want and his lifestyle expectations. So the Canadian teams may not be a fit.
And what a journey this was. We shouldn't race past the fact that the Canucks quite openly tried to trade Besser at the deadline. At that time, Patrick Volevine mentioned publicly the offers weren't where they liked. And even when they discussed contract with him in season, it was going to be something around $40 million total. He gets an extra $10 million on top of that with the deal they signed today, and obviously a little more term as well.
We believe the LA Kings are in the process of trying to finalize a Corey Perry deal.
Cool.
So we'll see where that goes, but no details on that just yet, and nothing ironclad, but Perry to LA.
Yeah. That's Ken Holland, the GM in LA, who brought him in to Edmonton. I want to ask you guys a quick question before we throw it back to James, and that is we've heard a lot about the tax situation with no tax states. We've also heard about, Jags, you've talked about the amount of scrutiny in Canadian markets.
Yeah.
Which matters more to players? The desire to have less scrutiny or the desire to go to a friendlier tax jurisdiction?
Bob, you want to answer that?
Sorry, I was preoccupied.
I mean, look, it depends on the individual player, right? Like, there are some guys who still, enjoy and embrace the juice that comes with playing and working in a passionate market. And all 7 Canadian teams certainly have that. And there are a number of American markets that also present that, the traditional hockey markets. But as I'm reminded on days like today, more often than not, it's about the money. And if you have the opportunity, that combination of being able to make more money and still contend for a playoff spot, or better yet, a Stanley Cup, then that's a perfect scenario.
It's a debate that continues on. It's something you can't really quantify, but it's certainly part of the equation. James?
It is nice to see, after the conversation we just had, that a guy stays in a Canadian market. It's not even a Canadian. It's an American who stays in a Canadian market. There again are the numbers for Brock Besser. 434 points in his career, coming off a 50-point season in 75 games played, and what was a tough season all around for all of the Vancouver Canucks. Let's bring in Farhan Lalji, our Vancouver Canucks reporter. What do you make of Boeser staying in Vancouver?
Yeah, I think if you're the Canucks, this was probably a good situation. You needed some goal scoring, and there was very little of that available in free agency, so you go out and get a guy like Boeser back. But you probably also have some regret as to why this couldn't have gotten done earlier this year. To CJ's point, they were looking at a number around $40 million to get this deal done early in the season. They couldn't get it done. They circled back around the deadline. They still couldn't get it done. And now you get to the 11th hour, you go into free agency, and you finally make it happen. Brock Boeser wanted to stay in Vancouver. He's made that really clear, and it's been that way for the last couple of years. Things really turned when he kind of gave his agent permission 2 years ago to potentially seek a trade outside of Vancouver. It didn't happen then, and he realized how that was a good thing for him. He wanted to be here. The one thing for Boeser, though, is he's going to need a distributor. And right now, they've got Elias Pettersson if he bounces back. And then, you know, those two haven't necessarily meshed on the ice consistently. Is it Philip Hedl? Can they go out and get somebody else done? Now you've got a guy that's basically eating up the rest of your salary cap. So the Canucks are going to have to find a way to get creative and clear some space if they're going to go out and get an upgraded center to help a player like Brock Boeser.
All right, that is Farhan Lalji in Vancouver as Brock Boeser signs a 7-year extension with an AAV of $7.25 million. So if he signed that before midnight last night, he could have gotten an 8th year.
That's
but
what
I guess
I find weird about it, James. He could have signed for 8 years. I understand there is the element of testing the market. I do like the player. He does add some goal scoring. If he went somewhere else in well, all we'd be talking about the Vancouver Canucks is where they're going to find those extra 20, 30, 35 goals. It's a good signing. He's a good player. You wonder why wouldn't he sign for 8 years yesterday?
I want to pull up something. It says 40.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with 40 in Vancouver. Elias Pettersson is making $11.6 million. You don't have a goal scorer around him, you're not going to get value out of Elias Pettersson. And I think that that's as much a part of this equation as anything. And you talked about wanting to watch him next year.
He's going to be one of the most fascinating players to watch in the entire league. And number 40 for the Vancouver
It would be really hard without some scoring ability around him.
And we know about the dysfunction in Vancouver's dressing room last year. Brock Boeser, a good dude.
Yeah.
Like, he's a guy that everyone gets along with. He's a guy that will add to the harmony in the dressing room and not to any sort of turbulence. So I think that is part of it as well. And I wonder, I'm with you. I'm like, well, if you're going to stay there, just sign for 8 yesterday and don't need to test the market. That's what tampering's for. You get your agent to call around to figure out what the market is for you before you lose the opportunity to get that 8th year. And I wonder if Vancouver didn't want to give that 8th year. Maybe it wasn't available to him yesterday for the same kind of number. But it's interesting. Boeser, they tried to trade, end up re-signing him.
Yeah.
Connor Garland, they tried to trade, end up re-signing. These guys that they didn't want at one point, now they're bringing them back. And they're good players. Not they should have them back, but it's seeing how they flipped on a couple guys in their roster.
3 American players. Thatcher Demko signed long-term. Garland signed long-term. And that Boeser signs long-term. 3 American players in Vancouver.
Well, and it's really interesting to me, too. You're talking about the goal scoring. Yes, he's a year removed from a 40-goal year. He had his 25 this year. But as Farhan mentioned, I'm just looking down the middle right now saying that, you know, they have some holes there. They're going to have to find a way to get a 2C. With Hedl, you know, his health and the question mark around his consistency, I think they really have to. They have to find a way to bolster. I know, you got to wait, but you got to figure it out.
Montreal's like, can we get in that bundle as well?
I know.
Bunch of teams
and it's such a lean market right now.
That player, and it's
like a trade deadline. Puck-moving defenseman.
The second-line centerman is the new puck-moving defenseman.
You're right.
They got to hope Phil Hedl stays healthy.
That's what they do. I mean, absolutely.
So 40 minutes into the free agent frenzy, our first big name is off the board as Brock Boeser stays in Vancouver. We have plenty ahead for you on the air until 5 o'clock Eastern Time.
Closed captioning is brought to you in part by Golf Town. Unlock your distance with the all-new tailor-made QI35 driver. Get fit for yours at Golf Town.
The Fantastic Four deserve a fantastic pizza with 4 different topping combinations. So there's something for the whole team! Get a Fantastic 4-in-1 pizza, only $9.99 at Little Caesars. Hot and ready.
Auto Trader has the most cars.
I knew they had a lot of cars, but I didn't know they had the most cars.
I'm literally on every night because you never know when a deal can just like pop up.
Everything is there. You'll always find what you're looking for with Auto Trader. The answer is Auto Trader.
The new Elite Driver's breakthrough AI 10X face helps deliver our best combination of distance and forgiveness ever. With drives up to 8 yards longer. The future of performance is elite in every way with the new Elite Drivers from Callaway.
Could be. Because with Phoenix.ca, I can connect with a physician to talk about ED treatment plans conveniently and discreetly. So I can get help whenever the occasion arises. Whenever.
You cracked the case. And all the while, you were soaking in the bath. Audible. There's more to imagine when you listen.
We know that the remarkable happens when East meets West, coming alive in our shared passions, our creative pursuits. And here, in Sapporo, you too can discover the remarkable where East meets West.
If I got it, then I bought it. Take a bite, cause I want it. And I know I got the taste for the cake, and I take what I make and I flaunt it, flaunt it. Got diamonds on my necklace, I live how I like. So looks is getting reckless. I'm feeling myself and you can't break my vibe. I'm feeling myself and you can't break my vibe. You can't break my vibe. You can't break my vibe.
Surprised no one showed up for the stream today. Very surprised, guys. We had
Box.
4K for the NBA draft. We had 4K for the NHL draft. Everybody said they were going to show up for free agency. I don't know what happened.
Buy
what
one
happened,
box
guys?
meal, get one free. Only on the KFC app and Skip. F1 the movie, now playing.
Fresh Stone Rollies, ready at any moment for real-life moments. Loaded with your favorite flavors,
Might have to
Rollies
end the
keep you
stream
reaching for
at
more.
1 o'clock.
Share them, dip them, love them. Rollies, life rolled up.
Wimbledon on TSN with exclusive feeds on TSN Plus.
Been a Stanley Cup finalist 5 of the last 6 seasons, has Corey Perry with 4 different teams, which I guess means the LA Kings are going to the Stanley Cup final. Here's Gordon Miller in the Insiders.
Yeah, Bob McKenzie talked about it a moment ago, but it's official now, Pierre LeBrun, that Corey Perry is a Los Angeles King.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm just getting this text message right now. It's going to be a 1-year deal, a base plus bonuses. That should be around $3.5 million in total when you combine all the bonuses and the base salary. So Corey Perry to LA. He had interest in staying in Edmonton. There was that interest in him, but they didn't have the cap room to make it happen. So Ken Holland brings back a player that he brought to Edmonton.
Who began his career in Southern California with the Anaheim Ducks.
Won a cup.
Also getting a raise at age 40, not too bad.
So I guess the other thing is the Philadelphia Flyers are busy today. So they've signed 3 free agents.
Yeah, Noah Juleson on the back end, Christian Dvorak on the 1-year deal at center, and now Dan Vladar is signing a 2-year deal. The former Flames backup gets $3.35 million, which I think tells you a fair bit about where this goaltending market's at. With Jake Allen remaining in New Jersey, now Vladar comes off the board. There's a couple other goaltenders out there, James Reimer, Anton Forsberg, but not a lot on the free agent market for teams that need to upgrade at that position. And Philadelphia hopes that in Vladar they can at least secure things back there, because goaltending certainly was an issue for them last year.
All right, Bob and Dregs are busy texting, so we'll figure out what they have in a minute. James?
All right, guys, thank you. Also, some extensions on this day. William Eklund, fine young player in San Jose, completed his 2nd year, 1 year left on his entry-level deal, but he signs an extension, 3 years, $5.6 million on the AAV, which will kick in 2026 and 2027. And there's Vladar, of course, who moves on to Philadelphia, 3.35 AAV and a 2-year deal for a guy whose career save percentage under 900, but been a serviceable goalie in the places that he has been so far. But that's pretty good AAV for Dan Vladar. Is it?
Philly.
Yeah, they desperately need someone to make a save for them. I don't know if that's the guy to get the job done, but they're taking a flyer.
They got Fedotov there, they got Ersson there, and now they have Vladar there. And you talk to the guys in Philly, they have another prospect who's playing over in the KHL. They think he's good, but they don't know. So they're just going strength in numbers. Hopefully one pans out.
So we pondered Corey Perry in Florida, which would have been fun. What about Corey Perry in Los Angeles?
I like it. You know, he's going to try and beat the Oilers, right? LA hasn't been able to do it, and so now all of a sudden you got a guy 19 goals with the Oilers this year, and just, you know, what he can do net front. You know, he's tenacious, and we all know the worm, what he can bring in the game. So for me, this is a guy that gets to the paint, and he can do some damage.
Think about how how Chris Knobloch used Perry. He put him up with McDavid, put him on the second line. Why did he have to do that? It's because they don't have players that can do it. Now they've lost Corey Perry. Like, how are the Edmonton Oilers better? They're not.
They're not.
And Corey Perry is a player now that clearly helps the LA Kings, and there's no question in my mind they'll use him in a similar way, but that's a good signing for the LA Kings.
I thought he was better this year than he was about 7 years ago.
Yeah, the last 7 years, and I love it, the fact that he said, I might be 40 years old, but I think I still have a lot to offer. I proved it in my play this year, and you're not just going to say to me, hey, we have this much money for you, and that's it. Take it or leave it. You're hanging on by the last straw, just take it. He said, you know, I'm a good player, and I feel like I'm worth this, and he got it. And I love it for the LA Kings, Cheryl. You mentioned you can't get by the Edmonton Oilers. Take a little piece away. Take a little piece away and maybe try to do more. Who knows?
It's not a coincidence he keeps ending up on good teams. Yes, he helps make them better, but he's also, those teams are drawn to him. We need a guy who can play, who understands the dynamic of playing in the playoffs, who can be a fourth liner, but then also slide up and play with better players when need be. There's a reason why, and LA is one of those teams. They are very good.
Yes, they are.
And they were a chip out by Quinton Byfield from beating Edmonton this year. Really, they would have been 3-1 in that series. And so they were going to be really, really good. But you look at their roster with signing of Kuzmenko. Corey Perry doesn't have to play in the top 3 lines during the regular season. Spot duty, second power play, and then wait when you want to save his legs, when you need it, injuries crop up, he can pop in there. He's a great filler, but he doesn't, and he probably can't be a regular 82-game top 3-line player anymore.
At some point, he's got to slow down.
Well, he always plays slow, so it doesn't really matter. He already is slow. That's why he's the worm. He goes slowly. But it's a right fit with that team, with the players that they have available in front of him as well.
But in the playoffs, at different times, as you mentioned, sort of that plug and play, and you saw him go up with McDavid or whether it was Draisaitl, and he would get to certain areas. He knew what that next play was, and that's just a veteran. Right? He's got a natural knack around the net and knows how to move the puck to those players. It's not easy to play with the top players either. So when things are down and you can just insert and get a good shift.
It work.
Exactly.
They make it work.
Exactly.
So Corey Perry is a king. We have more information for you. Let's send it over to Gordon Miller once again in the Insiders.
It's not Corey Perry. It's another LA-based player. Vladislav Gavrikov is signed. Pierre LeBrun.
7x7 for Gavrikov, the top defenseman in the UFA market, joining the New York Rangers. That was really the long-held rumor in the last couple of weeks that the Rangers would want to call today and try to get him if he got to market, and it seemed like it was a mutual desire to get that done. I suspect he probably had richer offers actually out there, but 7x7 for Gavrikov and the New York Rangers.
Yeah, now you look at the secondary market on the blue line, right? Because teams have been waiting, and not that there aren't some, interesting unrestricted free agent defensemen that are still very much in play. But when you think of the top end guys, I think of, again, Bo Byram from the Buffalo Sabres. You think of Rasmus Andersson, the Calgary Flames. There's some speculation now that Gavrikov has been confirmed to the New York Rangers, what they do with their blue line. And Keandre Miller's name has been out there as potential trade bait for Chris Drury. So many pieces in play on the defensive side.
All right, the dominoes start falling, but that's a big one because with Besser off the market at forward and now Gavrikov on defense, the pickings are getting a little slimmer.
And the Kings are finalizing a deal. We already said they signed Corey Perry. Also, Yoel Armia is going to go to LA as well.
Might be a 2-year deal, but not sure on that. So.
Oh, Bob McKenzie heard from. Isn't that nice? James?
All right, so there's Gavrikov, who was the #1 defenseman available on our list after Ekblad signed yesterday. A 30-point season and a very useful defenseman in Los Angeles, 136 points in 435 career games. I thought maybe this was going to be one of those ones where the numbers got stupid just because of the market and all the teams willing to spend money. So 7 times 7
feels light.
Which is a strange thing to say, but it
respectfully saying.
Yep.
Huh?
I don't know what to make of the New York Rangers, though. It seems like they're just piecing this together on the fly, and they obviously hated what happened last year. But what they're actually going to look like, the complete package, and what they're going to do, and how they're going to get back to a quality team in the East, I just don't know how they're going to do it, Craig.
Well, they have a great goaltender. That's number one.
Well, yeah.
But they have Panarin, and JT Miller's a good player there, and they're trying to make sure that they're not as bad as last year. They're not going to be as good as when.
What's difficult for me to get to is they were so bad last year and it was such a mess. How are they going to regroup from that? This guy's obviously
Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan.
They want a guy who's going to be organized.
Well, Peter Laviolette's not exactly the laughingstock of coaches. I always thought he was a hard ass and he was going to get it together.
When you watched them play last year, for the first half of the year, they were not well organized in their own end.
Agreed.
That's a polite way of putting it. Gavrikov stabilizes that. That's why they wanted him. That's why they targeted him.
Keandre Miller?
And to me, immediately I'm like, okay, that's a good deal. Sounds like a guy who maybe chose market, wants to live in New York, like Panarin. Like guys choose markets for different reasons. Took a little less to go somewhere he wanted. But the next domino clearly is Keandre Miller.
It's got to be.
And I think that they don't have that much money left. And my Will Cooley offer sheet was still on that one. But I think Keandre Miller will be the next guy to get traded away to someone because he is a good player. I just don't think they love the mix with him and Fox, and then maybe too similar, not robust enough defensively. So I think, and I imagine Keandre Miller will have some suitors around the league.
I think it would be a mistake if they trade Keandre Miller. I think Keandre Miller had a bad year last year, just like all the defensemen in New York had a bad year. To Mike's point, they weren't organized.
No.
They didn't know how to play. They're chasing around. I'd be really careful. I think Keandre Miller's a really good player. You want to be a good team. Why would you trade a good player?
I think their concern is that he's good as is, but you see him and he's so talented, you think he can do more. And you almost get frustrated with what he isn't as opposed to appreciate what he is.
That's management's
Which is pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
And you want to be harder and meaner and tougher and stronger because he can be.
But that's just stupidity, Mike. That's management stupidity to not realize what you have and go, we want more.
Yeah.
He is really good.
As is.
But how do a bunch of good players, good defensemen, as you guys just described, look clueless back there in the National Hockey League? I don't understand that. You could
coaching.
Connectivity between their forwards and their defense was a disaster.
Yeah, but the guys won a Stanley Cup before. He doesn't just forget how to coach.
I didn't say he did, but the coaching was a big problem there last year. All you got to do is watch their team play and go, what were they playing?
You say coaching, I say players. Playing defense is not that hard. Not as hard as they made it look like. You got to have forwards that are willing. I meant defense.
There we go. Come on, Cheryl. Let's
Frankie,
go.
We've angered Cheryl.
When I said playing defense, I meant playing defense as a team, and that's the whole point.
Okay.
That the forwards were not willing.
Yourself. Good save.
That's what I meant the whole time. Though.
It's a six-man unit. It absolutely is.
The forward disconnect. They turn pucks over. They put the D in bad spots, and all of a sudden you're running around.
Right.
Frankie.
Frankie's
angry. He's restless.
Make a pass on the tape. We can go off the ice and not play around the whole time.
Thank you, Frankie.
Yeah, hopefully we can change the mood a little bit over here.
Handle the pass up there. Come on.
Frankie.
Well, Frankie, LA's made a couple big moves. What do you think about the moves that they've made and what they're doing?
Okay, well, isn't it interesting that Ken Holland is now in Los Angeles, and he says, I want to pry Corey Perry from the Edmonton Oilers, so maybe brings a little bit of the recipe that he thought he had to win a Stanley Cup in Edmonton, brings it to Los Angeles. Listen, they didn't get the big fish, right? They would have been in on Mitch Marner, would have been trying to acquire that player, had the money to do so. So now you make your contingency plans. If you strike out on the big name player, try and go heavy on the other types of things, the intangibles. And that's exactly what the Edmonton Oilers and Ken Holland has done here now.
All right, now pivoting to the Canucks, huge news that Besser is back with the Canucks. How does that impact their roster?
Okay, I am actually surprised that Brock Besser is back with the Vancouver Canucks because they made attempts to sign him during the season. Then they made attempts to trade him. They didn't trade him. And then as he wasn't on his way out the door, they basically came out and said there was no suitable offer for this player. Right. A little bit disparaging the guy, which what we thought was on his way out. Turns out he's coming back at $7.25 million. If we take a quick look at Nikolai Ehlers, where does that leave him? Well, you could look at it two ways and say, he has all the leverage in the world right now, and he's going to get paid. Or we could look at it and say, you know what, Brock Besser, maybe the money wasn't there for you because you saw what was going on around the league, and you had to circle back to the Vancouver Canucks. But as far as the Canucks go, they need to keep some players coming back, and one of those guys is Pius Suter. Now, the center market, we just saw Christian Dvorak sign for $5.4 million. Pius Suter's a good player, a productive player. He really popped off this last year with the Vancouver Canucks. And the fact that he's reliable and you can trust him, he's not your typical second-line center, but he's coming off a cap hit of $1.6 million. He is going to get paid more and more here and will likely have a little bit term. So, I mean, for Vancouver, you would like to keep this player. He's a versatile guy for you. He's a reliable player for you. But like we saw with the center market, Christian Dvorak getting $5.4 million, there could be a lot of money out there for Pius Suter if he stays patient.
Yeah, and like you said, he popped off. He set career highs in points and goals last season. Back to you, James.
All right, Takia, thank you. So the #1 defenseman on our list heading into the day is off that list. Vladislav Gavrikov is a New York Ranger, 7 years, $7 million per year as the free agent frenzy continues.
Canadian dairy farmers do things the Canadian way. On family farms.
From British Columbia,
PEI,
to Ontario,
they help ensure a reliable food supply. They care for their cows and the land while producing 100% Canadian quality milk to some of the world's highest standards.
That's what the Blue Cow logo stands for. From New Brunswick to Manitoba
and all across Canada.
That's the Canadian way.
Canadians like to pack a lot into summer, kind of like a Harvey's seasoned chicken wrap. Packed with your choice of grilled, buffalo, or crispy chicken, and topped just the way you like. Pack Harvey's wraps into your summer.
We know that the remarkable happens when East meets West, coming alive in our shared passions, our creative pursuits. And here in Sapporo, you too can discover the remarkable where East meets West.
Wayfair's Canada Day clearance is on now. Right now until July 6th, score deals on everything home, like up to 50% off outdoor, up to 50% off living room, and up to 70% off rugs. Plus, score amazing surprise flash deals for just 24 hours. And get it all with fast shipping straight to your door. Even the big stuff. Canada Day clearance ends July 6th, so don't wait. Shop now to score up to 70% off and celebrate this summer season with savings.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
My spot, mic drop. My spot, mic drop.
With Dulux's buy one, get one free, skip the stress and do it for less. Buy one, get one free ends July 7th. Find your local paint store at dulux.ca.
Lunch or dinner differently at Tim's with our new Supreme Stack. Piled high with sliced seasoned steak and double smoked bacon. It's a sandwich that's built to satisfy. Tim's differently with the new Supreme Stack.
I'm ready to roll, so come on, let's go, baby. Oh, 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 oh. I'm ready to roll, so come on, let's go, baby. Oh, 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 oh. I don't wanna wait for a world so slow, baby. Oh,
Nikolai Ehlers, the top free agent available on our list, the power hour from 12 to 1. We expected this because of what the guys were talking about with tampering and maybe some hesitation to announce deals early. The numbers significantly down from last year. You know, part of it is the crop of free agents as well. In our first hour last year, 27 signings totaling $470 million worth of contracts. This year, only 8 and $89 million. So a massive decrease from last year. We'll see what happens over the next few hours here on the Free Agent Frenzy. For now, let's get you back to Gord Miller and the Breakers with more information.
We got lots to talk about here. The dominoes are falling on defense because the New York Rangers signed Vladislav Gavrikov. He comes in and out goes Keandre Miller.
Yes, Keandre Miller, a restricted free agent that the Rangers hadn't agreed to any terms with. And so as the Carolina Hurricanes are working to finalize a trade for him, part of that discussion now, what's the contract look like? So they're working through getting Keandre Miller signed in Carolina, and the dominoes, you're right, are falling one after another.
Connor Brown to New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, change in Edmonton, obviously. Connor Brown to the Devils, 4 years, $3 million per. So Kenny Holland, or I should say Stan Bowman, will have a little bit more money. But also to clarify, I mean, this is a good signing. The experience of Connor Brown will definitely help the New Jersey Devils, the versatility of the player, defensive side, all of that. I'll let the analysts speak to it. But you look at what Edmonton has tried to do. There's been some speculation around what they still might do, not just adding but subtracting. And speculation around Adam Henrique, who's got a no-move clause. I think they're done on that front in terms of moving some of these assets out with Perry, Arvidsson, Evander Kane, and now Connor Brown. So shopping to do for Stan Brown and the Oilers.
And Bob McKenzie, the Maple Leafs have signed a player.
Yeah, Michael Pezzetta, ex of the Montreal Canadiens. Craig Berube looking for a depth lineup that is going to play the way he wants him to play. And there's plenty of snarl in a guy like Pezzetta who's got lots of energy and can play it tough.
All right, anything else, boys?
Sorry, 2-year deal on Pezzetta, and it was worth $775,000 and $800,000.
There you go, James.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Connor Brown joins the New Jersey Devils after a couple years in Edmonton. One of 3 Canadian teams he's played for after starting his career with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and of course a 3-year stint with the Ottawa Senators, brief stint in Washington before he joined the Edmonton Oilers, but now off to New Jersey. 30 points last year in 82 games played. With healthy last year, playing all 82, which is the most important thing for Connor Brown. What can he do for the New Jersey Devils?
I love what he brings to the table. I think the knee injury in Washington early when he got there kind of hampered him a little bit, or else he would have been signing for more money possibly right now. But I think he knew his lane, and he said he wants some security. And he can bring some added leadership. I think that's the one thing that being in Edmonton, he looks like one of those guys that can score goals in big moments. He can play in all situations. I think he still has a belief in his offensive ability if he can be put in that spot. I'm not saying he's going to be a 35-goal scorer, but I love the intangibles, and I love what he brings. Energy alone and fitness, all the intangible stuff, I like what he brings to the table.
Yeah, his speed is picked up, and he's not as fast as he once was. Sheldon Keefe knows him from having watched him playing against him in junior hockey, but it's a good fit for Connor Brown. I mean, they move out Eric Howla, you know, and now
they need wingers.
Look this type of player.
Needs wingers. They have 3 pretty good centermen, right?
Yeah, they
you have Hughes, you have Heischer, of course, and Johnson Mercer. So you need more wingers, and I think Connor Brown sees that and like, okay, I'm not going to be just a 4th liner. I could play on a 3rd line with Mercer.
Put me with any of those guys.
Value role and all the stuff you talked about makes him a good fit.
Okay, let's bring in Connor Brown now, who's just signed with the Devils. Joins us on the line right now. Connor, you know, the obvious money is a consideration, but why New Jersey as your choice on this day?
Well, I feel like it's just a really good fit for me. First and foremost, I see them as a team with, you know, a lot of really good players on great contracts, and you know, I see potential to go on some really good runs there, and obviously it's a good fit for me too. You know, those Hughes brothers are great players. It's a tough team to play against, so you know, I'm really excited about it.
Is there any feeling of leaving unfinished business after getting that close to a Stanley Cup 2 years in a row in Edmonton?
Yeah, it's a bit of a heavy heart. You know, we left it all on the line. You know, and it's not an easy thing to kind of turn the page there, and Edmonton will always hold a really special place in my heart. So, you know, with that being said, just trying to look forward and excited, you know, to get back in the playoffs and try to have another run at it.
We were talking earlier today, you know, there's been some talk of players wanting out of Canadian markets and just wanting to go to a quieter place. You've played for 3 Canadian markets. It's never been an issue for you.
A lot of money to pay for
I just wanted to ask you, you know, beyond yourself, what you think of that idea of players not liking the pressure of the fishbowl of Canada.
Well, I can't speak for anyone else, but I personally loved it. I love my time in Edmonton. I love my time in Toronto.
Unfortunately, I'm
I love my time in Ottawa. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for the
highs
conversation.
are high, the lows are lower.
I hope you guys enjoyed your
it can be not easy to
weekend.
play in that fishbowl.
Happy Canada Day to all the Canadians on the stream.
To play in a place like
see you guys soon.
Edmonton.